Good. I'm going to go ahead and call this January 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Happy New Year, everyone, and thanks for attending this evening. Ben Davis is unfortunately excused. He's at his sister's wedding and was unable to get back this evening. I'm also going to reorganize the agenda and move item 3A, which is the presentation of plaques to our departing City Council member Ryan Hennon, just in front of item 5, which is the oaths of office of the seating councilors. With that said, I do have a presentation I would like to read at this point honoring William E. Heilman and his family, and I'd like to thank Susan for coming this evening. I'll try to keep it together. It's my honor to present to Susan, Haley, and Holly and their family this memorial plaque recognizing Bill's years of volunteer and professional service to the city of Whitefish. His service extended well beyond the halls of this chamber and the court, contributing to so many organizations and efforts valley-wide. In addition to practicing law, Bill served as president of the Northwest Montana Bar Association, Whitefish Chamber of Commerce, United Way chairman and board member, Flathead County Economic Development Council, Whitefish City Parking Commission, and First Interstate Bank Advisory Board. He also participated as a board member for the Whitefish Winter Carnival and as Carnival Prime Minister, a Rotary officer and board member, Whitefish Booster Club, Moose Lodge, and Knights of Columbus. Quite the list, I might add. When elected by the voters at our first meeting with Bill, he asked that we refer to him as Judge Will. Judge Will was an exceptional judge, serving with honor and integrity. And Tristan at the Beacon coined it perfectly. And I quote, "Those who met Judge Will in his final years of life likely did in a state of some distress, trying to clear up a speeding ticket or misdemeanor citation. But they picked up on the kind gentleman. Judge he was, which is why he would often smile and send them on their way with a sincere statement, 'Good luck to you.' And he meant it. He ran the court with respect, dignity, and the utmost respect and care for everyone that came in front of him. In our opinion, he was a true ambassador of Whitefish. I recall when I moved to Whitefish, I would frequently see Bill, Susan, Haley, and Holly, they were very young at the time, strolling the streets of downtown Whitefish, always smiling, and I would guess they were probably on their way to the Buffalo Cafe for lunch. Before I met Bill for the first time, I would always ask myself, who is this guy? Does he run the town or something? He knew everyone. Bill was a cornerstone of this town, a friend to so many, and helped build this great community we all call home. So on behalf of the City Council, city staff, and the court, and the entire Whitefish community, thank you, Judge Will, for your service to Whitefish and for your friendship. Godspeed, you are forever in our memories. And I'd like to invite Susan up to the podium, please. Thank you very much, everyone. That brings us on to item 4 of our consent agenda. Can I have a motion for approval, or is there another motion? Excuse me, I did skip the Pledge of Allegiance, and I was actually going to ask Jim Ramlow if you don't mind leading us in the pledge this evening. Thank you, Jim. We will now move on to the consent agenda. Can I have Steve motion?
I'd like to pull item D off of the consent agenda.
That gets no discussion. Steve?
I would like to make a motion to reconsider ordinance number 21-20.
Is there a second to the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will second it.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And that carries on a 3-2 vote with Councilor Fury and Hennon voting in opposition. Steve, I'd like to address this item since we have Ryan Hennon who participated in the first public hearing here tonight.
Okay. I'll try to be brief. I know that we have
Please.
a lot on the agenda. It's very difficult for me to move forward with legislation that we know is unenforceable in the language that is there, with respect to restricting rentals from 30 to 90 days to anyone who is a tourist or a remote worker. There's another issue, so that's the first issue. It's unenforceable as written. It doesn't take effect for 1 year. We did get a letter from one of the people involved in crafting this language, and she said we need to do something now, and we do need to do something now, and the meat of this will not take the part we need most, which is to try to figure out how to keep our residences, our residential neighborhoods for our residents. Won't take effect for at least a year, or for a year. And then the last part is that it certainly tells certain people that they aren't welcome in our community. And that just makes for bad legislation, and in my opinion, it's a poor use of government power. So I would like to, my goal would be to strip the language from the midterm rentals and direct, and I can bring this up at the end during counselor comments, but I think what we need to do is direct staff to immediately undertake moving these issues into to a different part of our zoning code, Title 11, Chapter 2, 11.2-4, Articles A through I are the places where we should be addressing this. Those are our residential zones where we're having a problem with these 30-day to 90-day rentals, where people are buying these homes sight unseen a lot of times and then renting them for 30 days, and it's hurting our neighborhoods, and that's where we should address this, not by vastly redefining what determines a short-term rental. Our definition of a short-term rental is what we're doing is vastly redefining that. The other part that bothers me is that we are setting ourselves up broadside to the state legislature, and if we're going to do that, which it sounds like we want to do, to take care of this 30 to 90-day rental issue, we need to have sound legislation that is enforceable, and we can do that by moving it to a different section of Chapter 11.
Thank you, Steve. With that, can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. We'll move on to item 5, which is the administration of the ceremonial oath of office to 3 city council members. Ben Davis, again, is excused. But first, I would like to acknowledge Ryan Hennon served on the council now for 4 years. He did an exceptional job. This is pretty difficult stuff we do up here, and we do it as volunteers. And I'd like the audience to recognize Ryan's 4 years of dedicated service to the city this evening. We'll be seeing him around.
Thanks for the time, Warden.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah. Best of luck. Ryan's expecting his first child, so he's moving on to bigger and better things.
Yep.
Thanks, Ryan. Yep. Yeah, you can take that.
You'll miss it. You'll miss this when you're gone.
I'm going to go ahead and invite Giuseppe Caltabiano to the podium, please, to administer the oath of office.
Mike.
We need Michael with us.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I I, Giuseppe Caltabiano,
I, Giuseppe Caltabiano,
as a city councilor of the city of Whitefish, Montana,
as the city councilor of the city of Whitefish, Montana,
do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend
I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the state of Montana,
the Constitution of the state of Montana,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. So help
me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Andy, you're up.
I can't believe I'm actually nervous. I think I've done enough. I should have it known. I know by heart.
4 more years.
Not sure that's necessarily something to be proud of.
Mic is off, you have to do it again.
Oh, yeah, I think people are. Giuseppe, I am actually, we're going to reorganize the dice. Sit next to me tonight. Let's take a few minutes to let Giuseppe get settled. Welcome again, Giuseppe.
That was a test. Appreciate that, Mike.
We'll move on to item 6 of the agenda, which is communications from the public. We do have 5 public hearings scheduled this evening, so if you're here to speak on one of those particular items, please wait until I call that public hearing. Otherwise, if you have anything to share with the City Council, now would be your opportunity, and name and address, please, for the record when you approach the podium.
Good evening and Happy New Year. My name is Ruben Castron, representing Citizens for a Better Flathead, 135 South Main Street, here tonight on behalf of our Whitefish residents whom we represent, discussing Section 11C of your agenda tonight regarding the Memorandum of Understanding with the Public Services to continue their operations of hauling waste from the central recycling site. We'd like to make the City Council just to consider the high proposed cost for public services has for continuing that operation. In the communications from the city manager, they estimate it will cost $8,000 to $10,000 per month for them to continue those operations. In doing a little bit of research and for comparison, it appears that Flathead County budgets an average of $832.64 per month to haul waste from each of their 6 recycling drop-off facilities across the valley. We provided written comment tonight, which has a shot of their budget line, which delineates the cost of that. So we'd encourage the City Council to look for a way to reduce this cost, and if that is impossible, then to end this as quickly as possible by pursuing option 2, which is presented in the city manager's report. Furthermore, if you do pursue option 2 and have Republic Services haul this waste, we encourage you to require additional reporting. Flathead County Solid Waste and their contractor does additional reporting, which includes the tonnage hauled from each site and the cost of disposing of each tonnage. You can see some of those statistics on the last page of the comments which we submitted tonight. And finally, closing the recycling site in Whitefish for the interim before curbside recycling is implemented would be an inconvenience, but not a huge one. There are still drop-off facilities in Columbia Falls and at the landfill on the way to Kalispell. So we hope we can find a cost-effective solution to this. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Hello. For the record, Z and the address is 418 East 2nd Street, Whitefish. So my comments this evening are for the newly sworn council member, Giuseppe G-Man. G-Man, I don't know if you remember, but on the Friday before Election Day, you were down on the sidewalk and you were dancing, and I approached you and I asked you if you were celebrating the endorsement that you received from the Montana Daily Gazette. And at first you feigned ignorance. You seemed to not know what I was referring to, and then when I explained to you the Montana Daily Gazette being the domestic extremist website, and that they had your picture prominently displayed on their website, then you laughed and you said, and I quote, "I thought it was the Interlake, but anybody that likes me, I like them." So I left, and I just wanted to remind you and anybody else who may be interested, as you took the oath of office and you swore to the Constitution, your picture is still on their website with the headline, "Best Candidate Ever," which makes me wonder what position or positions earned you that superlative from this website. Did this ringing endorsement help you get elected? I hope not. Do you honor the people of Whitefish by condoning domestic extremists and their dangerous propaganda? I know you don't respond. This is public comment and you just listen. So I'm just going to ask you respectfully, when you do have an opportunity to address the public, perhaps you will take this opportunity to renounce the Montana Daily Gazette. You've already been elected, so you don't need their endorsement for anything. That's what I request of you, Giuseppe. And I will leave with this quote. As Maya Angelou said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better." Thank you.
Who's next? Aaron.
Aaron Wallace, 265 Hawks Lake Lane, Whitefish. I'm just here to let you know that I am representing the Linds for their Lakeshore Ordinance, which is item number 9, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have at that time. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll call you up if we have any questions. Further public comment this evening? Not seeing any, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the audience.
John, should I see if anybody online?
Yes, please. Thanks, Michelle.
For those of you who are online, please raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment during communications from the public. regarding anything that is not on the, sorry, Lisa, you cracked me up, that is not on the agenda as a public hearing. And it looks like, Lisa, go ahead and unmute your mic.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Lisa Jones, 314 Blanchard Hollow, also own 3 long-term rentals in city limits. I realized after I made my comment during the public hearing 2 weeks ago that I left off my most important point, and I think it was said, but I really want to reiterate and reaffirm the direction as you consider the final ordinance this evening. I understand it's not a public hearing this evening, so it is appropriate for me to make this during public comment. And please stop me if I am incorrect on that. But that point was that we are under the high demand for real estate and that out of area investors are buying sight unseen because they can rent to the lucrative 30-day market. That is the bleed contributing to our challenges, and that is the bleed that we want to stop. As I said then, it is complicated and urgent, and I support any steps you can make toward keeping our neighborhoods local, as well as the currently underway workforce housing projects and consideration of future options to help our housing crisis. I acknowledge the urgency of the ordinance to address the short-term rental terms for better enforcement is at a critical point, and I agree with the options discussed last meeting to make those changes now. I also agree with your consideration of changes to support a CUP process for current residential owners, and you may need to make further amendments to deal with the 30-day rentals. So please address it how you see fit, whether residential zoning language needs to be changed or amendments made to the ordinance, but please do it in a timely manner to help offset the bleed of speculative real estate investors that don't care about our locals or our neighborhoods. I support all of your efforts, and I thank you for doing the hard work here tonight.
Thanks, Lisa. Anyone else, Michelle?
For those of you who are attending by phone, please hit *6 on your phone pad, and that will raise your hand, and it will show me on the screen that you've raised your hand. We'll give you a few moments for those to catch up. I think we're good, John.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll stay with the audience. Any volunteer board reports from the audience tonight? How about the council? Not a lot of board activity lately. So we'll skip right to our public hearings and start with item 8A, which is consideration of a request from Little Bear Development No. 2 LLC for a preliminary plat to develop a 20-lot subdivision located at Fairway Drive. The property is zoned WR2, which is our medium density resort residential zoning, and the Whitefish growth policy does designate this property as, quote, resort residential. Wendy, good evening.
Good evening. So again, this is a preliminary plat application. The applicant is requesting a mixed residential subdivision of 20 lots, 10 single family or duplex lots, 8 townhouse sublots in one building, and 2 lots for condominium development with a maximum of 4 units in one and 25 on the other, with a total maximum number of units of 56. The property is a little more than 7 acres, so it's coming in at 7.9 dwelling units per acre. The higher density portion of the project you'll notice is towards the north, which is right next to the soccer fields, the Grouse Mountain soccer fields. The property is located along Fairway Drive, and the new private road will loop through this development, connecting Fairway Drive into 2 locations. All lots will have their primary access off the internal street, and the new private road is proposed to have a sidewalk on one side. The property does have a stormwater conveyance bisecting the property generally from the west to the east, kind of in the northern third of the property. And this area is being protected as part of the open space and parkland dedication. As part of the subdivision application, they are requesting 1 variance. Our current city standards and engineering standards require a sidewalk on both sides of the street, and they're requesting a sidewalk just on one side. Get to in a second here. So again, the property is located, it's unaddressed on Fairway Drive, south of the Grouse Mountain soccer fields. It is zone WRR2, which is a medium density resort residential. and it's had that zoning designation as far back as we can tell since the early 80s. The property is surrounded by residential, commercial, and then again the Grouse Mountain Park to the north. It is served by all public services and facilities. We noticed adjacent landowners within 300 feet. We posted a sign on the property, noticed advisory agencies, and placed a legal in the paper. We received 14 comments. As of the planning board packet, we had 3 more at the planning board hearing, and then you folks received a few more just today. Neighbors are concerned with the loss of trees, loss of open space, traffic, both construction traffic and traffic from the development itself, impact of traffic on the privately maintained roads, and its contribution to the wear and tear on the roads, concerns with the resort residential zoning designation and the density of the project. We review subdivisions according to the criteria in state law and the Whitefish subdivision regulations. Just to hit some of the highlights here, under effects on health and safety, access is being met. There are 2 vehicular accesses off of Fairway Drive, and the fire marshal will review the building and engineering plans to ensure all emergency access standards are being met. The applicant did submit a traffic impacts study because the project exceeded 200 trips per day, which is the standard in our engineering standards. According to the traffic study, 331 new daily trips are anticipated at full build out, and that's a 24-hour cycle. Traffic will enter and exit the site from Fairway Drive, but 97% of the project will use Highway 93 West. The TIS didn't anticipate any impacts and didn't recommend any mitigation measures. They did recommend some intersection improvements just to improve site distance. It's pretty overgrown in that area because it's been in a natural state for so long. So we did recommend that as a condition of approval. There's no mapped crucial wildlife habitat or seasonal migration corridors. However, it's very likely that deer and other animals do use this property and travel through it. The applicant will extend municipal water and sewer, minimizing impacts to groundwater. The property is not mapped as a high groundwater area. Again, there is a mapped stormwater conveyance through the project, which is being preserved and integrated into the project. Drainage is proposed to be collected and conveyed in ditches along the private road and then directed to that stormwater conveyance that bisects the property and then run off at a pre-development rate once it's been treated. Again, water and sewer are both available. The streets will be privately constructed, owned, but maintained, privately constructed, owned, and maintained, but open to the public. This project was part of the Grouse Mountain development. It is one of the lots, so we do believe that they have access to that Fairway Drive. The applicant is proposing to set aside 0.651 acres of open space, which includes the stormwater conveyance. All open spaces will be held in private ownership. According to our subdivision regulations, they are exempt from parkland dedication because they are providing a long-term protection for a water quality area, which is the stormwater conveyance, and it exceeds the amount that we would require otherwise. It does comply with the growth policy and the zoning regulations. Under the variance request, again, that is to construct a sidewalk on one side of the street. And the reasoning for this is that there are no sidewalks in that development at all. But we do want to see some sidewalks because we think it's important to have some place for pedestrians to walk. But the granting the variance is not going to be detrimental to the public health, safety, or general welfare. It isn't really necessarily due to the physical shape or topography of the property. It's just this is the last undeveloped lot in this neighborhood. And that previous development was done before there were standards to require sidewalks. There isn't an undue hardship. This isn't going to cause a substantial increase in public costs. It's not going to place the subdivision in nonconformance. And again, it's simply because this is the last lot within this development and everything else within it didn't have any subdivisions, but we still want to have some sort of pedestrian and bicycle circulations for the residents. So the planning board held a public hearing on November 18th. The applicant and 4 members of the public spoke that night. Neighbors were concerned about the additional traffic in the neighborhood on their private roads. It was a missed opportunity to expand the city park, ensuring the backyard fencing along Fairway Drive is uniform. The minutes were attached to your packet. The planning board, there were only 4 folks at that meeting, and they were unable to offer you a recommendation. It was a tie vote of 2-2. Staff continues to recommend approval, and I've offered you a motion for that to hit. And so we have not changed any of the conditions of approval, but just to hit some of the highlights of those that we are recommending approval on. We do recommend approval of that variance request for the sidewalk on one side. We request that the engineering plans include a construction traffic detour plan that's accepted by the Grouse Mountain Homeowners Association, and that this plan is also coordinated with those folks. We'd like to see the site distance at the new proposed intersections be improved. We ask that they submit a tree preservation plan to identify healthy trees to be retained, and a method for protecting those during construction, and a plan for replacement if damage does occur during construction. We'd like to see only the trees removed, like from the rights of way and other infrastructure that they're working on, and leave the trees on the individual private lots until such time as a building permit is issued. Lot 6 is permitted up to a maximum of 25 units. Lot 8 is permitted up to a maximum of 4 units. And prior to the development of Lot 6 and Lot 8, a conditional use permit would need to be obtained. Some of the standard notes on the face of the plat, including that the internal roads are privately owned and cannot be gated, but they are open to the public. And then we also want to see CCNRs that provide for the long-term maintenance of their open space, managing weed, maintaining their streets and sidewalks, drainage, and providing defensible space. I also have a zoning map if you're interested in seeing that, and also a Google Earth map too for you. It's the zoning map, and then answer any questions for you.
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy? Frank?
Wendy, talk to me a little bit about this tree preservation plan that must be submitted. Is this their plan? Is this something we're going to get consulted on? I mean, how do we, their preservation plan could be, okay, 1 tree here, 2 trees there, and that's done.
Well, we have standards in the subdivision regulations, and they'll submit that along with their engineering plans is when we've typically been seeing them, because that's when they're looking at the overall site and where are the healthiest large trees that they can retain. Obviously, they can't retain everything. So they'll do a plan and they'll show us which trees are going to be preserved and show us how they're going to protect them during construction and tell us what the plan is if they do get damaged.
I don't mean to cast aspersions on this developer, but we've been to this party how many times now where we get a preservation plan and then it's completely ignored. The quarry comes to mind. Town pump comes to mind.
There weren't a lot of trees at the quarry.
Well, there were a number. There were a number along the front of that property that were supposed to be preserved, and so that's, I guess, my question. I think that's one of the questions this community would have is okay, show me what you mean by a tree preservation plan.
Yeah, it definitely is going to require some coordination departmentally, because Maria's staff's got the expertise. They don't necessarily review private trees, but certainly they have the knowledge and expertise. The Public Works Department is the one that gets the plan, and so, ensuring that we have a chance to look at it, they have a chance to look at it, we get to go walk around on site and make sure that, they do identify trees that can be saved. And then, they also have a pre-con, and that is also another really good time when the Public Works Department and their engineer and the contractors meet on site and we're talking about what needs to be done. This is the time to be talking about tree preservation. They're the ones with the big equipment.
Thanks.
Steve?
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, John. Wendy, it's hard to tell from that zoning map what Grouse Mountain Estates is zoned. Is it R1 or R1?
So Grouse Mountain has got, 5 different zoning districts. So the triangle, is the subject property. That's WRR2. To the right of that is the hotel, Grouse Mountain Hotel.
Right.
That's like an RB zone. To the south of Little Bear is R1, just a single family. To the west is WRR1, which is another resort residential zoning. And then further up the hill, I believe, is WLR.
Okay. And then the stuff that adjoins 7th Street, that eastern side of Fairway Drive is all R1 as well?
Yeah.
So it's not resort residential there?
Nope, mm-mm.
Okay, so the only adjoining resort residential is kind of to the south and west?
Right,
Up-
yep, and
up
then
Fairway
also the
Drive.
hotel as well.
Right, in,
Yeah.
in the hotel. Okay, thank you. I have a couple other questions. One is about health and safety. So when you review that according to state law, it doesn't, does it take into, does health and safety have anything, take into any account, pedestrian traffic, the safety of pedestrians in certain areas?
Well, we have access, so how is the property getting accessed? How is emergency services getting in? How are they accessing the project? Streets is more on the effects on local services. And we just talk about, does the project meet our city street standards? Again, this one's a little unique. It's the last lot in a private development with private roads where there aren't any sidewalks anywhere.
But what about the adjoining areas? That's kind of the issue here to me. Is that,
Well, there's
do
traffic.
you review, okay.
The traffic impact.
And does a typical TIS study look at pedestrian traffic on the roads? It just looks at the functioning of intersections,
Yeah,
correct?
it's vehicular traffic. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we look at 200 trips per day is when that project, or that analysis has to occur.
So there's nothing in state law under health and safety that, that you review in respect to hazards of traffic in an area that doesn't have sidewalks, for example?
I guess not necessarily.
Okay, not necessarily or no?
Well, I mean, I guess you could interpret anything to include that kind of a review. There isn't anything that specifically asks about pedestrian traffic in a neighborhood that doesn't have sidewalks.
Okay, thank you. That was part of my question. And then the other question I have is, you said 56 potential new resort residential units, correct?
Yep, that's the proposal is a maximum
That would be the
up to
build out?
56. Yeah.
What would
that's the
they,
proposed
what would they
build-out.
be able to build without a subdivision?
Well, it's 10 dwelling units per acre and it's 7.115, so they could build up to 71 units.
Okay, but
That'd be the
they'd
maximum.
have to keep the drainage intact. They wouldn't be able to build in that area, right?
Well, the setback's only 15 feet on either side of a drainage way.
Okay. But
But
there'd
71
be space that they wouldn't be able to just build willy-nilly throughout that area.
I mean, they could do multifamily, I suppose, but parking generally dictates. I mean, the maximum density doesn't usually get optimized just because of parking and stormwater and parkland and all the other standards that apply.
Okay,
But that is the maximum.
okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. Andy?
Yeah, just for the public's edification, I guess my own also, just because the question was asked in a number of emails we received. If we're at 10 units per acre, how do we get 25 units on lot 6, which is less than 1 acre?
We looked at the entire project. The whole density of the project is 7.9 dwelling units per acre. Because the lots to the south, closer to the single family, are larger lots.
So then what would total lot coverage be available on lot 6 at 25 unit build out? Do we know?
Yeah, I mean, that's why they're gonna come in for a CUP. They'll have to
Okay.
show us what's the building footprint gonna look like, what's the parking, how's the landscaping, all that other stuff.
Okay,
We'll look at that time.
thank you.
Giuseppe?
Wendy, thank you for the report. I have a question about the process. Staff recommends this process, this project with the amendments that you are proposing here.
Correct.
Or the request, the conditions.
Yep.
Planning board does not recommend it because they did not recommend it on a tie vote of 2-2. I read the minutes and there were.
Right, so it wasn't denial or it wasn't a recommendation, it was a no recommendation. They weren't able to come to an agreement.
Okay. I read the minutes where they were exchanging, trying to amend certain parts of this request. Do you understand, and I should ask the planning board, but do you understand what the planning board nay voters' concerns were?
Well, you could ask Steve. He was one of the nay voters.
Okay,
We tried to summarize them as best we could in the
thank you.
minutes.
Further questions for staff? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on this item, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Is there any public testimony this evening, or is the applicant present
The
has
applicant
anything-
is on WebEx.
Okay, does he or she have anything additional to add?
I think they did have
Okay.
some stuff to add.
We'll hear from the applicant's representative first, and then we'll go to the public. Michelle?
So Daniel, if you'd like to unmute your mic, you can have the floor. Just your name and
Can you hear
address,
me?
please. Yes.
Okay. Daniel Wright, 606 Geddes Avenue. Good evening, council members and staff. Firstly, Happy New Year, and thank you for your continued service to the community. My apologies for not being there in person today. I tested positive for COVID-19 this afternoon. My name is Daniel. I'm the project manager for Little Bear Development, a Montana-based company. I've been visiting this town for several years now and was lucky enough to relocate here in September of 2020. I really love the city, the people, the surrounding areas, and have enjoyed a warm welcome. So far, I've had the pleasure of working with several local consultants and contractors on this project, some of whom are with you today in person. These include Bruce Boody and his team at Bruce Boody Landscape Architects in conjunction with Sand Surveying, Doug Pettmeyer and his team at TD&H Engineering, Josh Smith at Slopeside Engineering, Christian Bell of Christian Bell Architecture, Jeff Raper from National Parks Realty, and Sean Frampton and Ryan Purdy of Frampton and Purdy Law Firm. All have been great at helping us get our proposal together for the Little Bear development. In July of 2021, we purchased this 7-acre parcel based on the site, location, and zoning. The land is zoned in the medium density resort residential district and has been that way since 1982, when the city established resort zoning districts. The zoning allows for up to 10 units per acre and up to 15 units per acre if a planned unit development process is followed, which we are not doing. Instead, we are seeking approval of a maximum of 56 units or 8 units per acre in the form of 10 duplexes, 29 condo units, 8 townhomes. This represents 20% less than the allowed base density. To blend with surrounding land uses, the higher density use types were designed at the north of the site with the less dense uses at the south. Our design also ensures that access to properties bordering the west of our site will be maintained by the gravel driveway at the end of Nelson Lane, a portion of which does run on our land. We have had the larger trees on the site surveyed and have designed lot lines and utilities to maximize tree preservation. We will maintain a buffer surrounding the site as requested in meetings with neighbouring landowners. Following our planning board meeting on the 18th of November, we have listened to and taken into consideration all of your comments. Based on the financial limitations of the scale of this project, we are unable to provide deed-restricted affordable housing. We realise although this is no longer a requirement, it's of huge importance to the community and therefore important to us. With that in mind, we'd like to offer a contribution of $100,000 to the Whitefish Housing Authority, $50,000 to be paid upon the completion of sale of our first 10 lots, the remaining $50,000 upon the completion and sale of our townhomes. Additionally, we met with Laurie Collins, the Executive Director of the Whitefish Housing Authority, in December, and we are committed to providing time and services to the Housing Authority by creating a financial model for the development of Alpenglow 2 apartments and assisting in any pre-construction processes as and when requested for that project. The vertical construction of our project will be well designed and maintained by strict architectural guidelines. Any vertical construction that is done by us will be a high standard, with building energy efficiency and locally sourced materials being our priority. The project will generate income for the city as well as many other local businesses and will ultimately be a net positive to the community. We ask for your approval today and look forward to answering any questions. Thank you for your time, and I'd now like to hand over to Bruce Boody.
Thank you. Bruce, you're on.
Good evening, council and staff, and I'll take just a few minutes here to touch on a couple things beyond what Daniel said. But basically, when we were talking about preserving the trees on this site, we went out, we actually had our surveyors pick up all the large trees. So they did an extensive survey, and we've really tried to design our lots so that we're preserving preserving as many as possible. And also, this is WRR2, so there is no minimum lot size in this zone. And instead of going that route, what we did was we even looked at the Green Place residential lots, and they are all about 10,000 square feet. And we as a group decided that we'd have a better chance of preserving the trees if we made our lots slightly bigger. So our lots average 13,000 square feet. So it's significantly different than what you would normally see, I would think, in the RR2 zoning district. I think that's about it on that part of it, and we have read all the findings of facts, and we are in agreement with staff about the findings and about the conditions of approval. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have. And there are a couple other members of the team here, particularly Doug Petmeyer from TD&H Engineering is here, and we're all available for questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Is there anyone wishing to speak on behalf of the applicant? Not seeing any, we will go to the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, just please approach the podium in your name and address for the record, please.
Bill, did you get? Thank you. Thanks. Good evening. My name is Karen Hill. I reside at 35 Green Place in the city of Whitefish. I'm the president of the Grouse Mountain Homeowners Association and representing their position. As well, I am representing the interest of Pursuit Collections, who are the owner of Grouse Mountain Lodge. Before I begin, just answer one question.
Just speak a little bit closer to the microphone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to answer one question you asked about the zoning density in Grouse Mountain area all around there. While it is zoned to be more densely used, the Homeowners Association, CC&Rs, limit this to single-family use and absolutely prohibit any rentals of shorter than 6 months. So while it might be more densely zoned, that zoning has been overridden by HOA CC&R. So effectively, it's an R1 with restricted rental. All of that community, just to answer that question.
Thank you.
I'm here today to make two requests. One is, while we do appreciate what Daniel and his team have done, and it's been in many ways very sensitive, there is one thing that causes us a great deal of concern, and it's minor, and that's the preliminary plat, which you see shows the debouchement of the south end of the road directly across from Green Place, which is one of our HOA internal roads. Directly to the north of that is, you'll see a structure, that is our entrance structure to Grouse Mountain. If, Michelle, you could show a picture of that. This is a very large, elaborate structure. This announces the entrance to our private community. It's about 27 feet long. It has power and water, obviously an elaborate piece of work on the road allowance to our community. The debouchement of the road proposed is the far side of that. Our request is very simple. We would like that road to move about 36 feet and come out below our structure for two reasons. One, visually the structure doesn't make any sense if it's on the wrong side of the road, and two, it was originally intended for our gate, and that's where the power and facility to install a gate is. We did present this proposed change to city planner on December 30th, and Wendy determined that the change requested was a minor one, which would not result in appreciable delay to the developer, and further advised that the location of the exit road, which we proposed, was well within the parameters for road configuration required by the city. Our reasons for wanting this change are fourfold, and they're aesthetics and community character, traffic flow, liability, protection of property values, and most importantly, protection of our vested rights to maintain the privacy of and exclude traffic from our roads. Firstly, regarding aesthetics and community character, Grouse Mountain subdivision is a very rural feeling, low density, heavily treed subdivision that's been here since 1979. The aesthetic sense we want to maintain is that of entering a private, quiet community, not being part of a high density, short-term rental community. Having the Little Bear Road debouche where they are proposed creates a visual, a visual invitation to go onto our roads, whereas where we're having it coming out, want it to come out, it will come out and face trees ahead of you and not invite you to drive onto the Grouse Mountain roadways. The natures of the two communities are very different, obviously. Ours is private and quiet, theirs is public, high density, and high usage. With the configuration proposed, should we wish to protect our community, which we have the right to do, we will need 2 gates rather than 1, which causes a great deal of expense. And we'll also have to remove that very expensive entrance structure and its supporting utilities. Our roads are narrow, between 27 and 30 feet, without sidewalks, curbs, or light, very much given to winding and dipping and rising, and not at all suitable for city bypass route. As it stands now, if you were to come out on that road onto Fairway Drive from the Little Bear Road and you took a GPS and said, I want to bypass the city of Whitefish, that GPS system will send you up Fairway Drive through our private roads, very small roads, not designed for this kind of usage at all. So we're very, very anxious to be able to preserve those roads and keep the traffic off them. To quote the Certificate of Private Roadways on the plats of Grouse Mountain, the roadways on this plat are intended to be private in all respects. It is understood and agreed that this private roadway does not conform to the state and county requirements for a public roadway. Because of size limitations, it is not suitable at all for suitable maintenance by the public authorities. The owners and successors in interest of the lots described in this plat will provide for the all-season maintenance of the private roadways. I mean, obviously, they're not up to standards to be a city bypass. We also stress that the ownership of these roads being in the HOA, implies liability for anything that happens on those roads to the HOA. Hence, for us, the less traffic, the better. The idea, which has been bruited, of controlling traffic with speed limits and signage is not an option on our roads, as the city will not enforce road rules on private roads, as explained by the city attorney in his letter to Mr. Grattan, our original developer, the letter dated July 22nd, 2002. The road location we propose does not transgress the city requirements for road configuration, nor create any safety or traffic flow issues, and allows us to more easily protect our roads and our liabilities. I would also note that the entrance structure in question is angled in such a fashion as it was designed for the road to come out to the north of it and to permit sight lines to the right looking up Fairway Drive. Protection of property values. To further quote from the Certificate of Roadways on the Grouse Mountain plats, it is understood and agreed that the value of each lot described in this plat is enhanced by the private, exclusive nature of said roadways. It is obvious that our requested road placement preserves that private, exclusive nature, while the one proposed in the Little Bear preliminary plat substantially compromises it. As well as that proposed road placement rendering ineffective our entrance structure, which asserts and announces the private nature of our roads. This again is a value consideration which is acknowledged by the city in the plat. Most important of all the issues, though, is the protection of our vested rights to exclude traffic from our roads. Grouse Mountain has a vested right to close off its private roads to vehicular traffic by the public, including, but not limited to, the right to install gates. That right vested upon registration of the original plat. I repeat, that that right is vested, not conditional, not in any way contingent. That right has been affirmed by the District Court of Montana in the judgment in cause number DV 14-1215B, wherein the court describes any interference with that right to protect those roads as, quote, unconstitutional. This judgment has not been superseded. In fact, it was affirmed by unanimously by the appellate court. To quote from the judgment, the final plat does not specify how the homeowners association can or cannot close roads. Nowhere in the plat are gates disallowed. This leaves the manner of closing off the road to the discretion of the homeowners association. Please note, the right to restrict vehicular traffic upon and protect the privacy of roads in any fashion it sees fit is a right complete unto itself. The HOA need not prove that there are traffic considerations or public safety issues in order for that right to be triggered. It simply exists. That's why we do most urgently urge considerations of factors such as safety and aesthetics. We don't think they are as significant to us as this right. We assert that the approval of the proposed plat as formulated would effectively and substantially interfere with our right to exclude traffic from and protect the private nature of our roads by making it much more difficult, costly, and disruptive to do so. Approval of this plat would be an unconstitutional interference with our rights to protect the private nature of our roads however we see fit. This interference is particularly unjustified where it is absolutely unnecessary. An alternative to the existing interfering proposal is available, which is supportive of those rights. This alternative is moving that road the 35 feet which we propose. It's a minor change, which makes a big difference to us.
I think we understand that.
Okay. The additional difficulties and expense which would be caused may be summarized as follows. If the proposed road position is allowed, we will need to build 2 gates to protect our roads, one across Green Place and one across Fairway Drive, above the proposed Little Bear Road. At neither of those locations is there power, which would be required to install gates. Further, those gates would be immediately adjacent to the homes on those corners, which will be unsightly and cause noise and annoyance to those homeowners and doubtless diminish their home values as a result. Secondly, the entrance structure itself is a part of the effort of the HOA to assert its vested right to protect the privacy of its roads. Should the existing proposal be approved, it renders that very elaborate and expensive structure useless, and it would require that the same be moved to be above the proposed road to be of any effect at all. This would involve even more significant cost and disruption, as the structure is served with water for its garden component and power for its light and anticipated gate usage. And those services would be need to be provided for any new location. By contrast, our proposed road placement would require just 1 gate on Fairway Drive, where the facilities for such gate are already in place, and the original entrance structure, which was intended for a gate and built for a gate, will not require any movement at all. So it would also interfere with no homeowners, either in our subdivision or in Little Bears, either visually or auditorily. Moving on to our second request, a little background might be necessary. Our second request is there are certain amendments we would like to see to the recommendations the staff made respecting this development. A little background is necessary on this. Since 1984, Fairway Drive from Highway 93 up to the gate in question, about 300 meters in distance, which is a private road, has been subject to a road maintenance agreement between Grouse Mountain Homeowners Association and Grouse Mountain Lodge. Pursuant to which agreement, Grouse Mountain Lodge is responsible for the maintenance of that stretch of road from that entrance structure to Highway 93. Above the entrance structure, Grouse Mountain HOA is responsible for all the roads. This has been going on since 1984. As the Little Bear development will have a significant impact upon that road on going onto 93, and this will have a significant impact on Grouse Mountain Lodge, what we're asking in the next section is that they be a part of the agreements and coordinations required. Specifically, that recommendation number 4 and recommendation number 5 in the staff report, or recommendation number 5, points 5 and 6, in that report add that the plans be acceptable to Pursuit Collections, the owners of Grouse Mountain Lodge, as well as to the Grouse Mountain Homeowners Association. Secondly, we request that there an amendment to recommendation 5, 7th, and 9th points, which currently contain protection only for public roadways and rights-of-way, to include private roadways and rights-of-way and private property, since these are in fact private roads. Lastly, to add a recommendation to the effect that the Little Bear development enter into a reciprocal road and utility use and maintenance agreement respecting Fairway Drive up to the HOA lands with the HOA and Grouse Mountain Lodge. The reason we make that request is obviously Little Bear will be using those roads, which at this point are the sole responsibility of either the HOA or Grouse Mountain Lodge, and we believe that in fairness they should participate in the maintenance of those roads. Questions?
Oh. Any questions for speaker? Steve.
Thanks for the history lesson, Karen. Appreciate it. Just, is it your intention that you will have to put a gate there if this
Yes.
if this passes?
We will, our intention, quite frankly, the community is changing. The larger community of Whitefish is changing, and our community in Grouse is changing. And in fact, Fairway Drive is a bypass of the city. It's unique in that it has that disability, if you like. 85 of our homes are along Fairway Drive. Our roads, as I said, are 27 to 30 feet wide. They have no sidewalks. They are hilly. They are steep. We have, our own community has changed in the last 4 years substantially. We now have 40 new families. Prior to this, it was pretty much an old person's place. Now we have children running all over those roads. It's the position of most of the members of our HOA that we're kind of changing our focus and making child protection perhaps our highest priority. So we would definitely gate this off. And if it happens that, you know, Little Bear prevails in their decision of placement of the roads, we'd probably do it anyway, but it would cost us a great deal more. As I said, that would violate our constitutional rights according to the Montana courts. But
And
also,
would you have to gate the eastern side as well then?
yes, we would do that as well,
Where
but that's
7th
only
Street
one gate at 7th.
Okay.
And the existing gate with the upper HOA, we would probably move that gate down to 7th.
Okay.
So it would be a much less egregious proposition. But seriously, right now, if you're coming from the airport in the south and you want to bypass the city, it sends you down Fairway Drive. So our concerns are really less with this particular development and the traffic it will cause, but the location of that one road, making it difficult to protect our community from other threats. We're not anti this development, don't get me wrong. Does that
Yeah.
help?
Are there currently any no outlet signs if you head up 7th? I should know. I run over there all the time. But
Yes, but they don't really work. And we've in particular, the problem comes with construction traffic, and I don't know if you know that one of the reasons for the installation in the gate where it is on Mountainside is there was a huge problem with theft, particularly theft from construction sites. Oddly enough, the day the gate went in, the theft stopped. So as we include, you know, as our more lots is sold, building out is happening, we also want to protect the builders who are building in our community.
Thanks, Karen. Frank, did you have a question?
I was trying to listen closely. You want the entrance road to this subdivision to be moved
35 feet.
north? of
No,
where-
oh, if you, sorry,
I didn't pick up where you wanted to go.
may I show you?
Yes, that would be lovely.
There's one entrance gate we don't want changed at all, that's the northern one. It's this one here, which comes out directly across from Green Place. And
Oh.
there is our entrance structure with its power. We just want it to move there.
That way, okay.
And, you know, I presented that to Wendy. She said it's a minor adjustment. It's not gonna slow down their development.
Okay, well,
So
thank you.
it won't require them to go back and redo anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Karen.
Okay, anything else?
Further public testimony. Phil?
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. My name is Phil Boland. I reside at 12 Green Place in Whitefish. I will make my comments brief. I'm in total agreement with what Ms. Hill was saying, but I want to follow up on a comment that was made by a councilor on December 20th that there would be no economic impact or revenue generated by Little Bear development going forward. That property of 7 acres has been idle for 40 years. Now it's going to be having 20 different plats. That increases revenue quite a bit to the city in terms of tax assessments, sewer, water, garbage, etc. And I think it's important to note that these are important elements that the city needs to consider if they're making a statement about accepting the development as Ms. Hill has presented. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Sir?
Good evening. My name is Ian Hudson. I live at 308 Fairway Drive. Is there any chance we could have the zoning map brought up? While that's coming up, I'll just say thank you for all the work you do here. We really appreciate it, and thanks to Ms. Hill for her guidance and input. I am on the board of the Grouse Mountain Homeowners Association, but I just wanted to make a comment. I didn't have any prepared statement or anything like that, but I am part of the new families that are moving into this neighborhood. We have 2 small kids, and they're coming in, and we've been welcomed by some of the older members, and it's been a great neighborhood. The kids are coming up like popcorn. There are no sidewalks here, and in the winter months, it gets dark quickly. So when we're walking down the street to Grouse Mountain to get dinner or learning how to ride the bike, we're seeing more and more traffic. And it's the massive CAD trucks that are bombing through our neighborhood to go up to Grouse Mountain Estates further up the hill. It's the contractor pickup. The traffic is becoming dangerous. And Councilor Quinnell, I really appreciate your question earlier about the traffic impact on pedestrians, because I think that's the big thing here. We don't want to incur the expense of gating our community, but we kind of have to at this point. And I just wanted to present from a parents, from a resident, you know, with small kids, this is really being an issue. And real quick, regarding their variance on just sidewalks on one side, there is probably a lot of foot traffic that goes down that road to Grouse Mountain Lodge to get dinner. And not having a sidewalk on one side could be problematic, because then you're walking on the side of the development only to cross the road again. So that's something to consider. And then I heard it mentioned that 97% of the traffic is going to come from 93 for this community. Well, it's going to be 100%. It's going to come either downtown or it's going to come down West 7th and Caro, because our community won't be accessible. So again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ian. Further public testimony tonight? Further public comments? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council, preferably.
John.
Excuse me, Michelle. Remote callers tonight?
Don't forget about me.
I keep forgetting we're still remote.
Is there anybody online who would like to speak towards this agenda item? Please raise your hand by hovering over the participants page list and hover over your name and raise your hand. You'll see a hand icon. Or if you're on the phone, *6 will also do that. We'll give you just a moment here. Okay, John, I think we're good. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. You're welcome to comment, please. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Amanda Jenkins. I live at 221 Fox Hollow, so I'm not part of the Grouse Mountain community. I live up the hill from the soccer field. So different concerns coming from my community, and I have heard concerns from my neighbors in Fox Hollow as well. I don't know if I can 100% speak for all of them, but I feel like many of us are on the same page. Yes, I see the tax revenue that would come in as a result of this project, and obviously that's something that would benefit the city. But in terms of adding value to this end of town and surrounding neighborhoods, I really believe that this plan, it takes more away from the community than it does give back as it stands. One thing that hasn't been mentioned so far is the Little Bear development will be able to leverage big expansive views of Whitefish Mountain. That's something a lot of us, like to look at, right? If they cut all those trees down, the trees between them and the soccer field, so facing north. I think that would be really nice for them, but what does that do for us? Current residents will lose a peaceful park setting and a natural buffer between our communities that's been there for a long time. Respectfully, I am opposed to this project because I believe the current natural setting is just ideally situated alongside the only park on this end of town. Smith Fields, as you know, is quite busy all the way on the other side of town. This soccer field also has tennis courts and a rest area. All of them are at capacity in the spring, summer, fall, and there's just a teeny tiny parking lot that serves that area. I see this soccer field it's going to be leveraged even further based on new developments that are already underway to the west of us, up 93. And if they clear cut that property, I'm really happy that we do have tree preservation as top of mind. If we're clear cutting that property, that would be super detrimental. Current residents, I believe, will become more inclined to, rent especially in my neighborhood, which we are resort, I think it's WRR1 in my community, so we can do short-term rentals. I think people who live in my community will become even more inclined to rent their properties versus stay close to town. And I think that changes the character of town, as we've seen significantly. If a compromise must be made, it's my opinion that a large natural buffer of trees should be left between the soccer fields and this development. Might block their view. I don't really care. And, there are costs to development, as we know. More traffic, fewer familiar faces, a less attractive landscape. New residents, I don't know if we can count on them, guys. Can we count on them? They may leave as quickly as they came. This is, again, it's resort, so people are going to be very transient, close to a long established community. And my community, which is, probably half established residents, half resort residents. All it takes, I think, is a drop in the stock market, a harsh winter, a shortened ski season, or we all know what happened in Boulder last week, forest fire. God forbid that happens to us. But we can't count on people, the high demand we have right now being the reality forever. I don't know if that's going to be forever. I don't know if it's going to keep going up. Do we know that? Sometimes the best course of action is to slow down. Another short-term rental complex, I don't think, is a fair trade for what it costs our local community. I know that's how it's zoned, but I believe you guys can do something about this. Based on current demand, I'm sure that we can negotiate with this developer. They're still going to win out. I mean, if they get this development done, I think we can ask for a lot more. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Rhonda.
Good evening. Rhonda Fitzgerald, 412 Lupfer. This reminds me a lot of the quarry, which started out being 18 or 20 little cabins and ended up being over 100 short-term rental, you know, very dense, very transient. I think, as was pointed out by Wendy, this is the last piece of the Grouse Mountain development, which is single family and some townhouses, duplexes. And this is very inconsistent with all of that. Most of it would be fairly consistent. It's duplexes, townhouses, single family, but that 25 unit thing, which doubles the density, is completely out of character with the rest of Grouse Mountain. And I think some of the comments you're getting are relevant to that. It's a big difference, and it creates a lot of problems that when you look at it and think, oh, RR2, that's a duplex, and 25 units is not anywhere near what you think RR2 means. And so I think that one component of this is completely inconsistent with what people expect. The neighbors on both sides. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda. Further public testimony. Jeff.
Hi, my name is Jeff Raper. I live at 719 Kalispell Avenue. I also own National Parks Realty, 601 Spokane Avenue. Just a couple of things. You know, like I said, the zoning for this particular tract of land was done years ago before I moved here in '77. It hasn't changed, hasn't altered. The original developer who bought the property platted it and created this 7-acre piece, and I had opportunity to talk to Tim Grattan about that future intended use, which was either going to be a secondary hotel to complement Grouse's Whitefish grew and the need for that, or condominiums that would allow for use of the zoning. That's what the piece has been there for years. So this particular individual who has purchased the land and looking to identify ways to develop it has actually taken a look at all of the neighboring components and offered you something with a lot less density that's blended. And to speak directly to the one piece that's 25 potential condos on the one remaining piece is substantially less than 70. And it's by nature of coming through the subdivision process that this discussion gets to happen. So I'm grateful for the fact that they took the time, went through the subdivision process routing to allow for opportunity for public input and to really come up with a blended development and a blended use, including incorporating in those single-family resident home sites. And as you transition closer to the hotel and closer to the highway, a little higher density. So I just hope you take a look at that as a whole, and I appreciate you guys' time. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Last call for public comments. Not seeing any, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for discussion, questions, or a motion one way or another to keep the meeting moving. Frank.
A couple of questions
Sure.
For Wendy. What are our options for requiring that internal road be moved, I guess, further north so it doesn't interfere with where the gate will end up ultimately being?
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, and we did just meet last week, and moving it 36 feet, or at least to avoid the sign and meet the engineering standards, that could be an added condition.
Okay. What can we do, Wendy, I looked at the plat again, and it appears to me that there is a significant buffer of trees that's on the parkland, where the soccer fields are, that is not part of this development. How deep is that?
Oh, I wonder,
Do we
is
have any
Maria
idea?
here, or she left? That would be a good question for Maria. I am not sure. And maybe Bruce knows, if Bruce is still on the line.
Craig, did Maria leave?
Yeah, I'm not sure where Maria went, but she did just show me a second ago on the computer. It looked like about a 20-foot width of trees that are on the parkland. Now, that's based on the county cadastral, so I don't know how accurate it is, but their survey work may show more accurately.
Yeah, if Bruce can comment, or Daniel, I bet they would have a better idea. Is there a way
I am not 100% sure, Wendy, but I think it's somewhere in the range of 25 foot. Yeah.
Okay.
And we can try and maintain that, and that's maintained with our building setbacks anyway.
Right.
So there's, if I'm hearing correctly, there's approximately 20 plus feet of trees that are on the parkland piece.
Right.
And their setback would require 25 feet more. So we would have a density of some
Potentially.
45 feet worth of older growth trees that would be maintained and on that property. So we wouldn't be
Right.
clear cutting.
Right, exactly. And then the spot that has the condominiums in the northwest corner would have a CUP, so they'd come back through that process and we could more specifically look at those trees along that corridor.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Steve?
Wendy, part of my concern obviously is public health and safety here with respect to pedestrians. Is there a way, how would we go about having the developer work with Grouse Mountain Lodge and the Grouse Mountain Homeowners Association to improve the stretch of road of Fairway Drive that leads up to this development and get a sidewalk there, at least for the people that are gonna be, because we're gonna have, it's gonna be short-term rentals, the people are gonna be walking to the lodge, they're gonna be walking to access the trail. It's, without a sidewalk there, it's dangerous.
Right, that might be a good question for both Craig and Maria, since part of it could potentially go through Maria's park, and then maybe Craig's got some ideas on along the road, and then hooking up to that trail that's on the road, on the highway. It'd be an off-site improvement to a private road.
Well, it just seems that this road, especially up to this development, needs to have a sidewalk, particularly there.
There's parking. I mean, there's a lot of things kind of going on in that little stretch.
Yeah, Fairway Drive is a private roadway, and so it's not city right-of-way that we can make our own improvements to, but I think that, you know, this CUP could be conditioned such that the developer work with the owner of that right-of-way to allow a sidewalk. I mean, obviously we have the park there, but I'd let Maria speak to whether or not a trail could go through the park.
Is the parking in the park, or is the parking within that right-of-way?
Not quite sure.
Karen can answer that question because it's on your road, right? Yeah. Come up to the mic.
Do you mind approaching the podium, please, just so we get you on record, please?
Mr. Grattan advised me that he built that parking facility next to the soccer field. He wasn't required to by the city, but he built it because he thought if he didn't have parking there, people in the soccer field would be using Grouse Mountain Lodge's parking. So he built that, and I believe it is on the road allowance because he wouldn't have been able to build it otherwise if it were on city land. And Mr. Grattan built that, I believe, in 1982 was what he told me. So it's been there a long time, but that also falls under the private roads that are the responsibility of maintenance by the HOA in Grouse Mountain.
Since you're here, Karen, could I ask you another question? Would you be amenable to working with the developer to try to upgrade that section of the roadway so that there's a sidewalk there?
Well, we certainly would be amenable to working with them. I can't speak for voting funds from my HOA because I don't control that, but I do think there's strong feeling in the HOA about wanting safety, so we would certainly, I would certainly say I'll give it my best shot.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I can do. Thank you.
Frank?
Wendy, one more thing. On that same line, can we condition this subdivision on their coming to agreement and building at their cost the sidewalk that would be necessary to go from their development to 93 along Fairway Drive.
I mean, I think we could add a condition that they, it isn't 100% their responsibility. It's an existing condition, you know, but they're, you know, causing us to look at this condition of pedestrian. I don't know. It'd be nice if
It's
Angie
their
was here.
impact that's causing this, though.
But it's already an impact, right? Because folks walk through the neighborhood, and the lack of a sidewalk has been a condition since, you know, for 40 years. I'd be interested if Angie could weigh in.
Angie is available. She's here remotely.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you know, I don't know that you could make that definitely a condition of the subdivision. If it's a CUP and you're trying to mitigate impacts of the development on the city, then I think you could. But kind of like everybody has reiterated, you know, this subdivision has never really, or Grass Mountain's really never had sidewalks. So I think requiring that as a condition of the subdivision, again, it's not a CUP, it's just a subdivision. We're just reviewing it per the subdivision state law requirements. Probably wouldn't be a good idea.
I want to add real quick, Maria just checked with GIS, and the parking is in the city's park, actually. It is set back from the right-of-way, and so you would be conditioning a sidewalk on a city park. And so I'm not sure how that'll go over with Park Board, and we'd have to look at how parking could even be accommodated there. So just be aware that I think along that park, it is within our our city parkland. But we would have to obviously confirm with a survey. So there might be contradicting information out there regarding that.
They're fairly deep stalls, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, probably on the order of 25 to 30 feet.
Is there more questions? If not, I'd like to make a motion.
Please do.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, I move to approve WPP 21-05, the finding of facts in the staff report and the 18 conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish planning staff in the staff report dated November 10, 2021.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Is there a second to the motion?
For purposes of discussion, I will second the matter.
Motion seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Giuseppe, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, sir. I really don't believe it's our job here to discuss and define the impacts, the depth of the tree swath. We are supposed to be, in my mind, legislative and zoning and strategic visionary for the city. We're sitting here in a quasi-judicial capability. And I just swore to support, protect, and defend two constitutions which clearly separate legislative and judicial or quasi-judicial power. So I invite all of us to listen to the city staff, and I would have listened to the planning board advice, but since there is none, I have to go with the city staff because I'm not an expert in any of this, and I haven't found or seen any new finding of fact. And for that reason, I move in favor to approve this motion. And I invite all of us in the goals that we will meet to discuss to do a deeper and better job in including studies towards planning and long-term vision for the city.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Further comments on the motion? Steve.
Yep, thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank the developer for his generous offer. It's not required in a subdivision, obviously, and for taking into account the public information that came out in the public hearing at the planning board. I'm still very torn on this one because one of the things we do actually need to do is evaluate the impact of these things, Giuseppe. And there is a health and safety issue, not just for Grouse Mountain. That's going to be mitigated. They're going to put up a gate. We don't have gated communities in Whitefish, but now we're going to have one. And it's their right to do it, and I applaud them for doing it because putting 56 short-term rentals right there is gonna, it's gonna cause a traffic issue. And now that all that traffic's gonna be diverted down Seventh, which does have a sidewalk, to Caro, which does not have a sidewalk, which is dangerous. And if you don't believe me, just spend 10 minutes sitting on Caro and watching people walk down the left-hand lane with their dog, 3 people wide in the middle of winter. All that traffic's gonna come down Caro now, and it's dangerous. We do not, and so this is the problem with these types of developments for me, is that our infrastructure is not capable of accepting this kind of development in this place at this time. And that is why I'm torn about this. Can we catch up? Maybe. I've been advocating to get a sidewalk on Caro since I've been on council, and we're still years out from that, because it's a major upgrade. It's going to be a major project. The other finding that I don't quite understand is that finding number 7 says that this is a residential use, and to me, short-term rentals are not a residential use. It is a residential zone, but taking this one piece of property that was designed to potentially be an addition to a lodge or condos does not meet the definition of residential for me. And adding, I think if we asked anybody in the city, do we want to have 56 new short-term rental units? Should we approve that? I think that, you know, I'm pretty sure where the citizens of this community would come down on that question, and it would not be favorable to this. At the same time, I get it. The by right could be worse. Would it be worse? I don't know. But approving this, we are creating a safety hazard for people that are coming to our community in the short term, that are going to be accessing the trail, accessing Grouse Mountain, getting from that development into town. They're going to be open to traffic where they are not going to be on a sidewalk. And we are creating a greater issue on Caro that already exists and is a problem. So right now I'm a little confused about which way I'm going to vote on this. Still haven't quite decided.
Thank you, Steve. Frank?
Giuseppe, I would like to make at least an attempt at a friendly amendment to add an additional condition to this approval, which would be to require that the entrance, I think from my perspective, it is the southern entrance into this property, be moved at least 35 feet north to accommodate the issues associated with the Grouse Mountain Estates building of their potential gate.
Is there a second to the friendly amendment?
Can we ask questions?
I'll second
Let's
it.
get a second on the table first. That was seconded by Councilor Cornell. This would be added condition number 19. Giuseppe, questions?
Yes. Can I ask the applicant to comment on what that would mean in terms of onerosity to the project, or how open they would be to that condition? Would that jeopardize the project?
It would have a substantial impact cost-wise on us having to rearrange, a substantial portion of the project. The only other thing is we have a section of green space that is actually located above the sign. So Fairway Drive actually runs through our southernmost corner, if you like, that very corner of the triangle. And the land on the other side of that is our green space. So this would mean that we would essentially be blocked from accessing a part of our land if we move this gate further down, as the Homeowners Association would like to do.
Thank you.
Further comments or questions from council? We will vote on the friendly amendment first, which will be condition number 19, which is to require the south entrance be moved a minimum of 35 feet north to address the concerns of the Grouse Mountain Homeowners Association. All those in favor of the friendly amendment, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And that motion does tie on a 2-2 vote, and I will actually vote in favor of the friendly amendment, which brings us back to the original motion. Is there further discussion?
I just
Steve.
had a question that hopefully didn't just fly out of my head. Never mind, I can't remember what it was.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And the motion does carry on a 3-1 vote with Councilor Quinnell voting in opposition. Thanks everyone for coming this evening. I would like the record to reflect that Rebecca Norton has left the meeting, and she is certainly excused due to a minor health issue. We'll move on to item 8B of our agenda, which is consideration of a request from Lorraine Gurgen, I hope I pronounced that correctly, for a conditional use permit to construct an accessory apartment above a new garage located at 424 Summers Avenue, and the property is zoned WR2. Jessica, welcome. We have not met.
No, we have not yet. Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a newer city planner for the city, taking over current planning for Terra. So, my project tonight is Lorraine Gurgen is proposing to build an ADU at 424 Summers Avenue. This is a conditional use permit for an accessory apartment above a new 2-car garage. The old deteriorated garage that is actually non-conforming will be removed, and the new garage and apartment will meet the current setback requirements. So they're getting rid of the non-conforming and building a conforming garage. The lot is 0.15 acres, and the existing residence is situated at the front of the lot. There is an interior lot line that will have to be abandoned as part of this permit. The lot is zoned WR2, and the surrounding properties are also WR2 on all sides. The growth policy is urban, which corresponds to ADU use. The structure is going to be accessed off of an alley south of East 4th Street, and emergency services could also access from Somers Avenue as well. The required parking is met on the plans. There's 2 in the garage and 2 in the alleyway. The height is at or below 24 feet, and there are no environmental concerns with the project. All utilities are existing and serviced within city limits, and like I said, they're going to actually be meeting the setbacks with the new garage, 10 feet on the sides, 20 in the rear, and getting rid of that old one, which will actually make it easier for people in that alleyway to get in and out of their driveways. They do not exceed lot coverage allowances, and the square footage of the apartment is under 600 feet. And there have been no public comments, and given all of the findings meet regulations for ADUs, the staff recommendation would be for approval of WCUP 2128, along with 8 conditions of approval, pointing out that they will have to sign a deed restriction for no short-term rentals, paving the driveway on the alley side, and proof of abandoning the interior lot line. And Planning Board unanimously approved at their last meeting.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. Any questions for Jessica on her staff report? Steve? No questions? No questions, Jessica. You got off easy tonight.
I got easy.
We
Thank
did
you.
thank you very much. Nice to meet you. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 8B of the agenda. We'll hold that hearing now. Are there any public comments this evening? Not seeing any, I'll close the public hearing and turn it back to the council. Steve?
John?
Excuse me, I forgot one more time.
Is anybody online who'd like to speak towards this? Please raise your hand by hovering over your name in the participants list and looking for that icon to raise your hand. We'll give you just a moment.
I think you need to have like a shock collar for me.
Oh, be careful what you wish for. I think we're good, John. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Steve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve WCUP 21-24, the findings of fact in the staff report and the 8 conditions of approval.
I second it.
Seconded by Councilor
Caltabiano.
Caltabiano. I'll get it right. I got it pretty right. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously, which brings us on to item 8C, consideration of a request from Whitefish Christian Academy for a conditional use permit to make temporary classrooms located on the property since 2015, permanent structures, and the property is located at 820 Asher Avenue, and the property is zoned at WR1. Wendy.
All right. So just a little bit of background on this project. Back in 2014, the City Council granted the original approval for the 2 temporary classrooms to be located to the west of the property, or of the main school. The intent was to build a new school offsite, and this was, they're just gonna do fundraising. The school is becoming really busy, and so they needed these temporary classrooms. So we said, yeah, that's fine, but you can have them for up to 4 years, and the building official at the time was comfortable with that. So they did put them in place in the fall of 2015, and that expiration was in 2019. In 2019, the Christian Academy was granted a second CUP to expand their school on their existing location. They abandoned the idea of moving off-site, but they wanted to keep the little classrooms in place while they worked on fundraising and getting the building constructed. So we thought that was probably okay, but we said that they needed to, not be in use starting the fall of 21, which, is just this last school year. So since the CUP has expired, and before it expired, we were in contact with the school, letting them know this is coming, what's your plan, what's your plan? And we gave them a couple of options that they could either move them, which is what the condition of CUP said, or they could make the temporary classrooms permanent and apply for a new CUP. So that's why they're here tonight. So they've scaled back their previous plans and now are proposing to use those temporary classrooms in a permanent fashion and make them permanent and leave them in the exact same location that they've been since 2015. And as I mentioned in the staff report, because they haven't been made permanent and been reviewed through the building department as a permanent facility, they haven't been used this school year. So there's no students in the building, they aren't storing any information or any school stuff in that building, and they've put all the kids in the main building itself. So in order to convert these temporary structures to permanent structures, they will need to comply with the building code, provided that the buildings can be brought up to current code. So there's some analysis that needs to happen. When you have a school setting, they have extra special rules for children and also being put on permanent foundations. So that analysis will need to take place. So we do want to see resolution. We don't want to see these buildings remaining on site indefinitely in their temporary state. So that is why we are here tonight. So again, the property is located 820 Asher Avenue. It's about 3 acres. It's being used as a private school. It's surrounded by church, daycare, and residential uses. Zone WR1, which requires a CUP for school facilities and has an urban growth policy designation. The property is served by all public services and facilities. We did notice all the adjacent landowners, place a sign on the property, put a legal in the paper, and we did not receive any comments. The project does comply with the growth policy. It can meet all of the zoning requirements. The site is suitable. Circulation patterns on the property are not going to change. The drop-off is still in the front. They do have some new teacher parking along the north side of the school, but all the parking standards can be met. A couple of things that have changed since we originally looked at these temporary structures. One of them was stormwater. At the time, the buildings were going to be temporary, so we were like, okay, we don't have to worry about stormwater because they're going to be gone in a couple of years. And of course, that's not the case. In addition, in about 2017, 2018, that parking to the north of the existing building was paved. They were using that area for teacher parking, but it was gravel, and as you know, we have to have parking, needs to be paved. So they did pave that, but no stormwater management was handled at that time as well. So now that the classrooms are going to be permanent, that parking is in place, now's the time to address stormwater. So we are recommending that as a condition of approval. East 8th Street continues to be, it's paved. It was paved in 2017. It's one way from the west to the east. It's about 12 feet wide, so it's not conducive for two-way parking at this time. We need to get more right-of-way to the north, not on the south side. There isn't room on the south side. But it continues to be a one-way street, and I don't know how well it's working, but I think it's functioning all right. There was an issue a few years ago because the way the road kind of lines up with East 8th on the west side, you come out on the south side, but with striping, we direct traffic to the proper side of the road, and I think that that has worked, and the city will continue to maintain that. So the planning board held a public hearing on December 16th. They did recommend approval. No one from the public spoke at that meeting. The planning board recommended approval, but they added a condition, number 9, which has some typos, which I'll fix, that the project go back through architectural review for mass, bulk, and visual aspects, and also to review landscape screening. As part of architectural review, this project did go through ARC review at the time, so it complements the building, the colors, and the materials and siding. We do have a process in place if there's any changes to a previously approved project that does have to come back to architectural review anyway. So that would be, I don't know if we'd look at mass, bulk, and but we would look at, the committee would look at amendments to the project. So I'm not sure if some of these things might need to be amended a bit. And then also for landscaping, final landscaping is reviewed by the planning department at the time of building permit. The architectural review committee does look at preliminary landscaping plans, but they don't look at final and do the final approval of landscaping. So I think that's kind of about it. So the main condition of approval, well, 2, of course, is the drainage plan that we'll be needing, and that the building needs to meet the building department requirements. And the buildings cannot be occupied or used for storage until the C of O is issued. So again, right now, there's no children in there, there's not storing anything, and until they meet all the building requirements, they will not be able to use them.
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing. We'll hold that public hearing now. Matt or Tyler, do you have anything further to add?
I'm Matt Lawrence from Montana Creative. I'm representing the client. I've done a preliminary code search on it and spoke to Tad about the existing buildings to see if they're compliant with life safety. And in my initial review, they were. We worked out a couple kinks with it. I don't really have too many comments. I'm just here in case you guys have any questions.
Great. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, you bet.
Did you have a question?
I do have a question for you, Matt. It sounds like you have to go back through architectural review anyway. Do you have a plan to make these look a little less like portables and more like part of the school?
You know, I have to see what they're considering for structural engineering and how they want to put these on a permanent foundation. There's been discussion of traditional concrete and footings and raising them and lowering them, or trying to find a way to support them and then screen the supports. I'm not sure which way the school or Tyler's recommending to support them. So I don't know what the final look would be. Being out there, I did notice they're sort of skirted. They look like they're on the ground. I guess they're trailers. I couldn't tell from looking at them. So once I know more about the structure of it and how it's going to be screened or hidden, it may change the look or it may not change it at all, and we just represent what we have. And I'd make sure mechanical is screened by landscape. That's an ARC review requirement, and any other of those requirements we would handle then. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Any public testimony this evening on this item? We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve WCUP 21-25, the findings of fact, and the staff report and recommended conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Planning Board on December 16, 2021.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Fury. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Which brings us on to item 8D of the agenda, which is consideration of a request from Joy Kulian for a conditional use permit to allow a guest house at 465 Armory Road, and the property is zoned WCR, which is our county residential district. Tara, good evening.
All right. Hi, guys. So again, Joy is here for this one tonight. She's trying to build a guest house on her family's property at 465 Armory. It's kind of the last property in the city off Armory there. The next one over is in the county. There is currently a single-family home on the lot, and then they've also applied for a building permit for an accessory building to be used as an airplane hangar that will be located behind the home. The guest house is proposed to be in front of the home. And the entire lot's approximately 2.4 acres, so pretty big. The structure will be accessed the same way as the existing home, using the driveway off of Armory. Zone WCR, country residential. To the north is suburban agricultural in the county. To the west is country residential in the city. South and east are both in the county as well. The property there is bordered on the north by the Whitefish Airport property and the railroad, so that's kind of how that hangar will access it. That's not a part of this application, but just for some context. The growth policy designation is rural residential, which corresponds to the proposed use. Only thing to note with utilities is that they are on a private well, and after talking with Public Works, they can remain on the public well. The hookups are way down by the armory, so quite a ways away, and won't be continued for a little bit here. No public comments. We did get one question from the neighbor about the hangar, but nothing with the guest house in particular. As of right now, it appears to conform to all the development standards, lot coverage, setback, so on and so forth. That'll be confirmed at the time of the building permit. There are 2 designated spaces for the single-family dwelling, as well as 2 off-street spaces for the guest house as well. It's a pretty big space, so there's lots of extra parking on top of that. The staff recommendation is for approval. The planning board unanimously recommended approval as well, and the only thing to really note in the conditions of approval would be that the applicant must pave the first 80 feet of the existing driveway that's required in our zoning code, and then also the owner must provide the city a recorded copy of a deed restriction or covenant that the guest house may not be rented, and if I remember correctly, it will be for Joy's mother-in-law to stay on the property. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Tara. Any questions for Tara?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Giuseppe?
Tara, thank you. May I ask you, where is it stated that that particular property should be deeded not rentable?
That's just a condition of all of our guest houses. They cannot be rented. So it's in our zoning code. I can pull up
Perfect.
the actual
Thank you.
number.
You answered
but
the question.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tara.
Mhm.
We did advertise for a public hearing on item 8D of the agenda. Joy, I know you're here. Do you have anything additional to add? Thank you. Any public testimony this evening? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council. Giuseppe? Oh. Michelle?
Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt.
I didn't have the buzzer. Not ready yet. Anybody else online, if you would like to speak towards this agenda item, please raise your hand by hovering over your name on the participants list and clicking the hand icon.
Right.
We'll give you a moment.
Closing.
I think we're good.
Great.
Good.
You only have one more to go.
I move to approve Whitefish CUP 21-26, the findings of fact in the staff report and the 8 conditions of approval. Is it? No, is it the right one?
WCUP 21-26.
Yeah, perfect.
You got it.
As recommended by the Whitefish Planning Board on December 16, 2021.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Fury. Further discussion?
Just maybe a quick question. Tara, I don't know if you know this answer or not, but it seems to me with this property previously, we'd had a requirement and a condition to pave the first 80 feet of the driveway, and it's still not done? Is that correct? Is memory serving me incorrectly?
I wasn't around at the time that the structure was built. I'm not sure what year it was. Joy, do you know what?
I'm pretty sure it was a requirement before, and it's still not done. So we'll just make, my point being that let's make sure it gets done this time.
Perfect. We'll double check and make sure that code compliance knows.
Great. Frank, comments? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously, which brings us to our final public hearing this evening, item 8E, resolution, what will be 22-1, a resolution to establish an increase in the parks and facilities fee schedule. Maria.
Good evening. This evening I'm seeking your approval to adopt a new fee schedule for parks and park facilities. My staff report begins on page 426 of your packet. Most park and facility fees were last increased in 2016, and depot park fees were last increased in 2013. Through our regular evaluation of fees, we looked at the associated costs for services, the history of past fee increases, and the comparability of fees with similar municipalities, and identified several fees that either did not cover the cost of services provided, had never been or had not recently been increased, and or were not consistent with fees in similar municipalities. Staff then developed a revised fee schedule for parks and facilities, which was presented to the Park Board during the November 2021 meeting. This meeting was publicly noticed, and all event organizers were invited to attend the meeting and provide comment. All comments received at the Park Board meeting were in favor of the proposed fee increases, and the recommendation of the occupancy fee and setup breakdown fees culminated from a dialogue between the Park Board and attending event organizers. The Park Board unanimously recommended the Whitefish City Council approve all proposed changes. I'll just go down through the changes in each category for you briefly. The park use fees in other Montana municipalities range from about $100 to $1,000 per day based on the size of the park, amenities, demand, and the number of participants attending the event. In the proposed fee schedule, existing fees increase by $5 to $50, resulting in a fee range of $30 to $300 depending on the tier. In the park gazebo rental section, we looked at similar municipalities, and their range was from $25 to $140 daily based on the size and location of the shelter. Staff is proposing gazebo rentals be organized by set blocks of time, 6 a.m. to 11, noon to 5, 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., and all-day blocks. This allows for more flexibility of scheduling and more rental availability. And the proposed fee schedule, Tier 1 and Tier 2 rates for a time block remain the same as the current half-day rate. Tier 3 rates per time block increase by $5, and in all tiers, the daily rates increase by no more than $20 per day. Therefore, the proposed fees range from $20 to $120. Facility rates in similar municipalities range from $65 to $312 based on the size of the facility, amenities, and demand. In the proposed fee schedule, all daily facility rates remain the same, while all hourly facility rates increase by no more than $15. As the Roy Duff Memorial Armory is the only facility on the fee schedule, the proposed rental fees for the Armory range from $48 to $300. The fee schedule for additional services proposes a change to the alcohol permit pricing. Our research shows that many other municipalities charge fees for alcohol based on the number of people attending the event. Following this model, staff has identified 3 categories: 0 to 25 people, 26 to 74 people, and 75 plus. The fee for an alcohol permit remains the same for those in the 0 to 25 range, but increases by $10 for the 26 to 74 range, and increases by $20 for the 75 plus range. The Park Board recommended 3 additional fees through their revision of the park event guidelines. An occupancy fee would apply to events that span multiple weekends where setup remains in the park. The proposed fee to occupy the park between event dates is 50% of the daily park fee. A setup and breakdown fee would be charged when event setup or breakdown occurs outside of the day of the event. The fee for setup prior to 1 p.m. is equal to the daily park fee, and the fee for setup after 1 p.m. is equal to a half-day park fee. The fee for breakdown occurring 1 or more days following an event is equal to the daily park fee. Additionally, the Park Board recommends a 20% non-resident fee increase for all rentals. Non-residents are defined as those living outside of city limits. This fee is reflected in each of the fee schedules. There's no financial requirement to implement this fee schedule, and I, along with the City of Whitefish Park Board, do respectfully recommend that the Council implement an increase of existing fees as presented in the proposed fee schedule to be made effective January 4th. So I'm glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Thanks, Maria. We'll start with Giuseppe.
Maria, thank you very much. I appreciate the fact that we're starting differentiating from non-residents and residents. That's good news. I'd like to ask you 2 questions. Number one, the invoicing money, the amount collected for these fees, does it end up in a general fund or does it end up towards the parks?
It goes into the parks revenue.
Okay, and there is no bookmark or allocated money for any other activity. It all goes 100% to the parks.
That's
Just making
correct.
sure. Okay, then I have a comment to that. Well, I'll wait after the motion for the comment. Thank you, Maria.
We did advertise for a public hearing, and we'll hold that hearing now. Are there any comments on our proposed changes to our park fee structure? Michelle, anyone available online?
Good job. For those of you who are online, please raise your hand if you would like to speak towards this agenda item. We're good, thanks.
Thanks. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve Resolution 2201, a resolution establishing an increase in the parks facilities fee schedule.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Is there a
say?
second?
Can I
Let's get
second
a
with
second
an
on the table
with an
first.
amendment?
I'll second
or
it.
Okay.
We usually get a second on the table, then discussion, and that's the time for friendly amendments.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Then we always act on the amendments before the original motion.
Bloody freshman.
But if you'd like, now would be the opportunity.
Okay.
Seconded by Councilor Quinnell.
Thank you. Misha, can you put up that slide? Is it still around? I went around and looked at state park fees, and I also consulted with some friendly attorneys about the constitutionality or non-constitutionality of differentiating from residents and non-residents. And as an example, hunting licenses and fishing licenses, anything that is considered a privilege versus a need can be, the Supreme Court has ruled that can be applied. And we have the case in the ice rink where we differentiate for non-residents. And now we are in this situation. I took the fee schedule from the state parks. Now, we like to do things better than the state, I guess. The state park is charging non-residents 55% more than what the residents are charged. So my friendly amendment is to change the non-resident schedule to anywhere, I need to get a number, to twice as much. So that's my friendly request for amendment.
So a 50% increase?
No.
From what stated,
100%
or 100% increase?
So I do not know if you can administer out-of-staters versus out-of-residencies. It's probably, because you see, I do believe that the community, even if it's not city, the Flathead County and Kalispell can enjoy those parks, and it shouldn't be as penalized as the tourists coming from Texas or Colorado, or not penalized, but charged for the gift we give them. So if there were a way to keep the non-residents that you have today for Montana in-state, and then do an out-of-staters where we charge double, that would be my friendly amendment.
Steve?
I guess Giuseppe, before I would second that, I would like to know how many I'm sure we rent our facilities to a lot of non-residents, but I would like to know if we have a lot of out-of-staters that are using our facilities, especially the ones that cost us, that would incur a really significant charge.
I would say that there would be a few occasions throughout the year that we would have maybe an out-of-stater, but it is not a common occurrence. They would typically be within Montana, within the Flathead Valley. Frequently, our event organizers are within Whitefish, but you could have some people wanting to rent the Armory who are out of the city limits for a birthday party or something like that. Every once in a while we would get, you could get people wanting to rent a park for filming. We do get some LA people wanting to do some filming and things like that.
And can I ask something else,
Yes.
May? When we say, the data you have, say I am a snowbird. I own a property here, so I have a legal address with a property here, but I'm not really a resident of Whitefish because I don't vote in Whitefish. if I had rented in the past, would have I been considered a resident or a non-resident?
If you have a utility bill with that address, that's what we would be accepting as proof of residency within the city.
And that would be too cost prohibitive to change that process into driving license, for instance? Because, again, people who are not residents here, they are the ones that we talk about when we talk about other issues. And they're not really citizens. They own properties, but they're not.
I would just like to add, when you think about why we're going to charge a resident that's out of city limits differently is because residents here are actually paying the property tax. So somebody in Kalispell is not paying property tax to support our parks, and this is really a cost recovery fee for the department to maintain those parks. It's a ways to, put down sod that might be trampled, or painting benches. In Montana, we have to set fees that are reasonably related to the cost of the service provided, and so I'm comfortable with having an out-of-city resident or out-of-city rate versus inside city rate, because there is that tax burden that our residents have. I'm not sure that I could say between the state of Montana and the rest of the country that there's going to be that difference. So that's just what I would caution you on.
And I understood. And for clarification then, can we say that we're talking about property owners here, non-residents? Because they're two different things, right? So we're saying property owners versus residents, just for the record.
I'm not sure.
What about renters?
I'd like to have Angie weigh in on this. I just heard her chime in.
Sorry, you guys. I know it's super awkward to do this over the internet. I'm not sure how we would distinguish. I mean, certainly we were not going to ask, when Maria's renting out the armory or something, like give us your property tax roll or anything like that. I understand the thought behind it, and I also completely agree with Dana that it needs to be reasonably related to the services that we're providing. And while people who are non-resident second homeowners might have more of a toll on services simply because, they're not paying what other people do, that I think we need to be very, very careful about a punitive amount for people that are either second homeowners or or even second homeowners. And I don't think that there's probably very many people that just come into town, for 30 days and are renting something. And Maria can correct me if I'm wrong.
We don't really collect that data. We don't know how long people are. Typically, we don't ask, how long have you been staying here? If you're going to rent the armory, we in the past have just rented to individuals who request. We would be able to identify if they were a resident or non-resident based on a definition by the address that they provide, and if we needed further clarification, we could seek some sort of identification. But trying to understand how long they've been staying, and is this your second home, is it your first? We do have a non-resident fee for our recreation programs, and that we do have some half-time families or seasonal families who do come. Typically, people will give us their out-of-state address, and most people are quite truthful about it, but we do sometimes ask for further clarification on addresses.
No further question. Thank you.
So I think for the purpose of tonight, Giuseppe, let's try to focus on just increasing the fees. I see where you're going with this, but it seems like we don't have the answers to some of those questions. It would take a little bit of research, so it's certainly something we can address at a later date, if you'd like to.
Can I still keep on the table the friendly amendment to increase the non-residents fees across the board instead of 20% that you have in your schedule, 50%?
I'll take that as a friendly amendment to increase the non-resident fees from what's stated in the staff report to 50%. Is there a second to the friendly amendment? Not seeing a second, the friendly amendment does die, which brings us back to our original motion for approval. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. And we're going to go ahead and take about a 5 or 6 minute break and stretch our legs. We are in recess. We're going to go ahead and get started. If everyone could take their seats, please. And we'll move to item 9A of the agenda, which is consideration of a request from Jim and Sean Kelly Lynn for a Whitefish Lake and Lakeshore permit to replace retaining walls and a minor variance to replace existing non-compliant deck located at 1240 Birch Point Drive. Tara.
Michelle, there should be a PowerPoint for this one too. Well, we'll get going anyway. So I guess just to start out, since Giuseppe's new and I know Lakeshore variances can be a little bit weird, just as a reminder, all of our permits, just if it's a standard permit, would just be on your consent agenda and you'd approve it that way with a recommendation from Lakeshore. But when there's a variance, we do it a little bit differently. It comes through communications from the planning director. It's not a formal public hearing, but we do go ahead and still have you guys approve it. So just a little heads up, just to kind of remind everyone. But like you said, this request is from Jim and Sean Kelly Lynn. They're at 1240 Birch Point Drive. For those of you who don't know where that is, it's a property on the west side of the lake that's situated kind of between the railroad and the lake there on Birch Point. It's a dead end, super skinny. I'm pretty sure most of that roadway is actually owned by the railroad, but they're able to continue using it. They did just go through the variance process for the home to be reconstructed. Michelle, I'll have you go to the next slide there. There you go. So this is what the Board of Adjustment was shown. That one went through at the beginning of the month here. Their buildable area is actually just that tiny little triangle there. These are a bunch of lots that were created pre-70s, so pre-zoning code. So most of them over there are super non-conforming. This original home was built in 1975. That included the original deck and stairs that kind of goes off. You can see a little bit of a square that goes down into the Lakeshore Protection Zone. That's where the existing stairs are. I can't tell if it's a purple line there is where the Lakeshore Protection Zone is, and you can see it kind of just barely kind of creeps in with the existing deck. So given that lots of the lots in the area were established prior to zoning, almost all of them over there either have grandfathered structures or some form of variance throughout the years just to get a home in there. Their neighbors at 1230 Birch Point, just south of them, received a variance to build their current home in 1990 and then received a subsequent Lakeshore variance in 2002 to exceed the allowable area constructed to install a dock. So we'll go to the next one, Michelle. So we'll start just with the standard permit. This has two parts, so this is not part of the variance. This is just the standard permit. First, they're asking for, or they're asking to replace 2 concrete and railroad tie retaining walls with stacked stone walls in the same location at a maximum of 12 inches in height. Those walls are currently a maximum of 18. Our code says that you're able to replace them in the same location, 12 inches or below, so that's what they've proposed. They'll also be removing some old wood stairs that I believe are actually treated wood, which we don't want in the Lakeshore Protection area, and they'll be replacing those stairs with stacked stone steps in the same location. In that area also, there's existing riprap, there's a gravel beach, and some minimal vegetation that won't be touched and isn't proposed to be touched. Next slide. So as far as the variance go, the proposed variance is to replace the existing deck in the same location with Trex decking rather than the existed treated wood decking. It wouldn't be a variance if they were just replacing a couple boards. That would fall under maintenance, and that wouldn't require this whole process. But they want to go ahead and get rid of the old wood, which treated wood actually isn't allowed in the Lakeshore Protection Zone to begin with. So they want to replace it with Trex. It'll be a little bit nicer, better material for the Lakeshore Zone. That'll be in the exact same spot. You can kind of see over there, it just goes a little bit into the LPZ, but again, won't be moved. There'll be no new supports or anything like that. They'll have to do a couple new joists just because of the new materials, but any of the supports will be cantilevered outside of the LPZ. The stairs that currently lead off the deck directly into the Lakeshore Protection Zone will be moved and repositioned as far out of the Lakeshore Protection Zone as possible over on the right side of the screen there. The corner will extend up to 2-foot max, so that'll be taking quite a bit of constructed area out of the lakeshore protection zone. And then the home's existing roof extends about 2.5 feet into the lakeshore protection zone. So it kind of just goes over the current deck, which again will be in the same location now. But they'll actually be pulling that back about 6 inches. So it will only be 2 feet maximum into the LPZ, which again, some places it won't go at all, but it just kind of goes a little bit based on where that high water mark is. Additionally, to kind of help with some of the constructed area and runoff issues associated with this type of development in this area of the lake, they are planning to add a rainwater catchment and settlement system to the structure that will mitigate some of the direct runoff from the home to the lake and then divert it to an on-site swale and water retention system on site. So as far as the allowable constructed area, they have 102 feet of lakeshore frontage. That means that they have 816 square feet of constructed area allowed on site in the lakeshore protection zone. The total proposed would be 690.5, which is within the allowable constructed area, and about 100 square feet less than the existing constructed area. The considerations that we go through to look at whether or not a minor variance is passed, first of all, the hardship being claimed by the applicant is that if they were to decrease and pull the deck completely out of the lakeshore protection zone, it would only be able to be a maximum of about 4 feet. So they're saying that would more be a pathway versus an actual seating zone, which is there currently. The second consideration is that no reasonable alternatives exist which do meet the standards herein. That one's a little bit tricky because there are obviously a couple of alternatives. They could have no deck, they could keep the current kind of decrepit treated wood deck. There's a couple options there. However, I think this is actually taking a lot of constructed area out of the lakeshore protection zone, so it feels like a fairly reasonable alternative overall. Especially with the rainwater catchment and the new Trex, which is a little bit better for the lakeshore protection zone altogether. Next, granting of the variance will not have adverse impacts on the lake or lakeshore. It improves slightly what's there already, so there shouldn't be any direct poor impacts. And then finally, the granting of a variance would result in the general and universal public benefit. Although small, they would be adding a rainwater catchment system, which would kind of help a little bit of the kind of direct runoff that would be going directly from the structure into the lakeshore. We had received no public comment prior to the lakeshore meeting. We have since received one public comment from Peggy Brammer, who's on our lakeshore board, just stating her opinion. The planning board recommendation was 3-2 for approval. There was quite a bit of discussion. There was quite a few different motions brought up that considered pulling the roof back out of the lakeshore protection zone, and then I think there was another one that they had considered just denying the variance altogether but approving the standard permit. But after a couple of those went by, they ended up recommending approval 3-2. But you can kind of see a lot of those minutes and that discussion there. So the only conditions of approval to note is just that the high water mark needs to be staked by a registered land surveyor prior to any work. The reason for that is just since this is so close, we want to see that high water mark is actually accurate and they can move forward for both this and then also the variance that was approved through Board of Adjustments. And then also just that any retaining wall materials that are removed, so kind of the railroad ties and things that can seep into the lake are completely removed from the lakeshore protection zone. So that's all I have. I know Aaron's here as well as the owner, so if you have any questions for them, they're available too.
Thanks, Tara. Any questions for Tara? We'll start with Frank.
Tara, I noticed this condition 3, any wood used in construction shall be untreated and left in its natural state. Use of wood, polymer, composite, i.e. Trex, is strongly encouraged. I got the impression that you said that they were going to use or committed to use Trex as opposed to wood.
Yes, that is the case. They'll be using, that's just one of the things that we have in our code saying what materials are preferable, basically, and saying that they couldn't go ahead and replace what they're currently doing with like treated wood that, you know, could seep into the lakeshore zone with runoff.
Right, but, I mean, given that our preference is for Trex, and that is what they have offered, why would we not make that simply a requirement under this condition? Because that's what we would prefer, that's what they've offered. I don't want to retrade this deal. In other words, one of the reasons we might approve this is because they're going to use the optimum products.
And what you'd be approving today is what they've submitted, so the Trex would be required under your approval.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Aaron or the applicant, do you have anything to add to Tara's staff report? I have a quick question for you, Aaron. No? We can
Sure.
ask questions.
So just a quick, maybe I can outline this thing fairly simply from you guys. So we've got the existing deck, and as you see kind of that orange line there, that's the high water mark. So the purple line that sits just north of that or top of that, that's the existing deck edge. And so there's areas that it comes up to the edge of it or not. What we want to do is take off the existing wood deck, which is got paint on it and it's treated and stuff like that, and replace it with Trex. The spacing on the decking boards are for the existing one for the joists are 2 feet on center. Well, Trex decks requires about 12 or 18 inches on center, specifically 12 inches. So to get the new joists in there to replace, to put in the Trex, that's why we're here specifically. There's another couple other components about this. The existing railing is an old wood solid railing that sits out in the lakeshore protection zone. We want to replace that with a metal, thinner gauge, lighter railing that is part of it now in the protection zone, but pull it back about 4 inches. Right now it sits prow of the deck. We want to pull it back even with the deck or at the face of it. And then the other aspect is the roof, which extends out a little bit past the existing roof, extends out about a foot overhang. We can pull that back to about 6-inch overhang over that deck. We don't want to lose the deck itself to pull it all the way out of there because of the fact that it is only 5 foot 6 inches deep. You have to pull it out 18 inches. And really at that point, you can't sit there and use that deck. We've gotten a variance for the approval for the garage, which is located adjacent to that in the new breezeway. So we lose quite a bit of deck space. We don't want to lose, by adding the garage, we don't want to lose any more deck space that's usable out towards that face. If we wanted to, we could just leave the deck as is and do the addition up as from up above, but we don't think that's the best solution. We'd like to get better, more materials that have a lot less leaching out into there. The other aspect of it is, as we've outlined, is that the stairway, we want to relocate that's out facing right towards the lake, adjacent as close as we can, tuck it, get it back out of the lakeshore protection zone as much as we can, and replace that with more natural materials with the Trex decking and also natural timbers. So if there's any specific question, that's what we're kind of proposing. There's also a few columns and stuff that we're taking out of there and getting that out of the lakeshore protection zone too, that won't be placed out of there. So everything we're trying to do is pull back as far as we can without losing our square footage, replacing it with better materials, and then also collect the rainwater and store that on site and filtrate it before we're releasing that back into the lake.
Can you explain how that system works, please?
Well, basically what we're planning, and we haven't brought in any engineers or anybody that specifically, but we're going to try to create a dry well system that's going to collect. There's a few roofs. Most of the roofs actually extend and slope back uphill towards the property. That water then kind of drains naturally from the road also. We have a breezeway that is kind of a bridge between the new garage and the home. Going underneath the home, that's the way it kind of works right now, besides the huge retaining parking area that's actually not on their property. And then, so we're going to collect, mitigate that, slow it down, put in more of a gravel situation, try to get it go into the grading below before dissipating out naturally into the lake. So kind of a dry well setup collected.
So the dry well setup, it'll be above the ordinary high water mark, obviously.
That's exactly.
So you have the gravity to do so.
Yep,
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's about 15 feet drop there.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Aaron? Thanks, Aaron.
Yep, absolutely.
Appreciate it. Andy.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to deny Whitefish Lake variance number 21 and then approve the standard lakeshore permit for the replacement of the ties and all of the other stuff that goes along with that one.
Is there a second to the motion?
I will second again for purposes of discussion, if nothing else.
Thanks, Frank. Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Andy, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I mean, my track record's pretty clear. Anybody out there knows it. I vote against these every time because they are a strict, pretty set of criteria by which we judge these, and there's 4 criteria. And it's not, maybe we kind of hit 2, maybe we hit 1 really hard. Variances, you need to satisfy all 4 criteria, and I can't in my own mind make that argument. And I think that it's pretty specific in the Lakeshore regulations, and it says, in a good example is these things are for maintenance, and it's saying right up here, it's a minor variance to replace an existing non-compliant deck. We're not fixing this thing, we're building a new one, and it's in the Lakeshore Protection Zone, and we don't build things in the Lakeshore Protection Zone, in my opinion. And that's partly wearing my Whitefish Lake Institute board president hat also, and being a very long-time Lake Shore resident. So there you go.
Thank you, Andy. Further comments on the motion? Giuseppe?
Yes, I do. And again, I can use my imbecile card because I'm new here. How is that the city staff missed 2 out of 4 criteria to the request of the variance? And the planning board too, I guess.
I mean, there's arguments either way. There's always going to be arguments either way when you have a variance. That's kind of taking what's out of the application and kind of looking at, you know, reasonable use overall. But at the end of the day, it's up to you guys. So.
Thank you.
Some of the criteria just up here, it's fairly subjective.
Yeah.
It can be interpreted differently between different council members, staff members, et cetera.
Correct.
Steve?
My question, Andy, and to possibly to Aaron, is that, and I think this goes back to our interview tonight with Mike Kelly, is that it seems like they already got a variance from the Board of Adjustments to build in the Lakeshore Protection Zone, to build that garage there.
That's incorrect. That's out of the Lakeshore Protection
The whole
Zone.
thing?
Yeah.
Why did that go through the Board of Adjustment then?
Because it was a variance for the Board of Adjustment, because it was outside of the building envelope that was allowable. Michelle, could you go back to, I think it was the second slide?
Come on up, Aaron, maybe you can.
Yeah, so
Provide some
on the right
clarification.
side, that's where that garage is, but it's not
Right.
in the Lakeshore Protection Zone.
Okay.
Purple line there is the Lakeshore Protection Zone. The reason why we had to get a variance was because we were inside the front yard setback. So, or the roadside setback. So if you see, that's why we had to get a variance, because we're inside that setback for the garage.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Is that on the south side, Aaron? Or the west side?
The road side.
Yeah, the west side.
Right, so
Yeah.
you can kind of see the purple or the yellow triangle right up there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to the south side, the bottom side towards the road, that dash line, that's our front yard setback.
Okay.
So we were either between, there was no real, again, there's the yellow area is only buildable area. In fact, right now, if you kind of see where their existing parking area space is, most of that isn't even on their property. So we tried to locate the garage on the 6 foot off the 6 foot side setback, and a couple feet off of the front setback to allow for overhangs, and then stay out of the Lakeshore Protection Zone. So that's a 24 by 24 garage, and as tight as we could really make it work. So,
Steve?
and one thing, just want to clarify, the existing joist and deck can stay as is for what we're allowed to do right now. And we can keep that as is, and our plan would be to do so if we didn't get this passed. The existing joists for the decks are going to stay. They're currently cantilever out right now. And what we do is just add additional ones between them to get the spacing we need don't have the deflection of the Trex decking.
Steve?
Thanks, Aaron, appreciate that.
Okay. Further comments from the council? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. To deny the variance, but approve the general permit. So the motion ties on a 2-2 vote with Giuseppe and Councilor Quinnell voting against, and I will vote in favor of the motion, and the motion passes on a 3-2 vote. Thanks very much for coming this evening. Thanks, Tara. We will move on to item 10A, consideration to approve the initial design and equipment procurement for the Spokane Avenue water main replacement project. Craig.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think I can make this one pretty brief for you. I think everyone's aware that the city did recently learn of plans from the Montana Department of Transportation to make pavement and crosswalk improvements on Spokane Avenue. We do have an existing water main that underlies Spokane Avenue, which is in a dilapidated state. The increased frequency of water main breaks and bell joint leaks of this cast iron water main are clear indicators that this pipe is well beyond its useful service life. City Council agreed with the need to replace the water main prior to the roadway improvements and awarded an engineering design contract back in November to Morrison Merrily. Staff has been working with Morrison Merrily for the past 2 months on the initial design of the project, and we've reached a point where we're ready to request permission to proceed with final design, public involvement, and material procurement for the project. So the preliminary design of the project, which is shown in your packet, includes about 3,750 feet of 18-inch diameter PVC water main. This includes all of the valves, the fittings, the hydrants, and the services to reconnect all the existing properties. The initial layout is shown, and a few of the highlights that I'll just bring to your attention. The conceptual placement of this new main is on the east side of the roadway, which is the location of the current water main. We need to do this in order to protect the existing storm sewer, which is on the west side of the road. We need to pick one side or the other in order to maintain traffic on the roadway, and so replacement of the main in its existing location is really the most feasible alternative. A detailed traffic control plan will be developed and submitted to MDT in order to obtain a permit, and at a minimum the plan will include one-lane, two-way traffic at all times. We'll also include a pedestrian control plan with that permit application. Pre-procurement of materials should happen in conjunction with the final design and occur before bidding in order to ensure product availability. We're planning to pre-qualify contractors due to the complexity of the project and the necessary traffic control, and that will run concurrent with this material procurement that we're recommending. Public outreach will begin later this month to include education on the project, the schedule, and what residents can expect during construction. And we do plan to specify that an arborist be required to be on site in the areas with the largest diameter trees. And it was determined, I think, to be most efficient to have that arborist on a per day basis. We will work with city staff to select an arborist ahead of time, and that will be required and written into the bid. So the current project estimate is $2.45 million, while the current fiscal year 22 budget for cast iron water main replacement is only $1 million. We did secure a grant through the American Recovery Plan for the additional $1.45 million. So we do expect to have cash available to complete the project, and the estimated cost for the materials is about $1 million. So based on the guidance and direction received to date from council and the preliminary engineering design, I do respectfully request authorization to proceed with final design of the Spokane Avenue water main replacement project and the procurement of the necessary materials.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions for Craig on his staff report? Or can I have a motion, please? Frank.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to authorize Craig to proceed with the final design and Spokane Avenue water main replacement project, including pre-procurement of any necessary materials.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second it.
Seconded by Giuseppe. Comments on your motion, Frank? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously. You do have Dana's report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana? Dana, anything additional to report on?
I do. Tonight, if you haven't seen already, the city is advertising and recruiting a new finance director. We wish Ben all the best at his new position in Colorado. And so we will be working through that transition, and one of the things that we will be doing is interviewing, and I'd like to see if the council, mayor, or council, if we could have 1 or 2 representatives join us for those interviews. They're tentatively scheduled for either the 2nd or 3rd of February. So if you have availability and are interested in participating, please let me know. We will have staff panels also participating in interviewing. It's a short window that we're advertising for. Hopefully we will, at least for the first round, hopefully we'll have some good applicants within the first few weeks. If we have to go back or wait and delay interviews, we will, so that we have an adequate applicant pool, because hiring is difficult right now, and cost of living and finding housing in the valley is a challenge. So. But like I said, thanks to Ben for all of his hard work. Got our annual financial report out this month, and has helped us really, be prepared for the audit that's coming up, and is helping with that transition process. And then just a reminder, next council meeting is a Tuesday, so it'll be Tuesday the 18th due to the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday.
Thank you, Dana. If no one else is interested, I would volunteer again. Frank, do you want to volunteer as well to be on that committee, interview committee? Okay, great.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yes, sir.
We'd failed to complete an earlier part of the agenda, and that was 5B. And based on that, I would go ahead and move at this point that Councilor Sweeney be reelected as our deputy mayor if he is willing to serve in that capacity.
I skipped over that. Is there a second to the motion?
I second it.
Seconded by Giuseppe. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. Wow, I really botched it at the beginning there. I skipped the pledge and the election.
There's a lot going on. I just
mayor.
looked at it and I was like, oh yeah.
It's the competition you don't want, right?
Thank you, Frank. You've done an awesome job. Glad to have you back on board. We'll move on to item 11C, consideration of approval of the memorandum of understanding with Republic Services to continue the current recycling site. And just to expedite this a little bit before I turn it over to Dana, I believe, or Craig, page 468 of the packet, PDF page, have the 2 options for your consideration this evening. Dana.
Thank you. We're all aware that we have a central recycling site, and at the last meeting, the council did decide to go rebid the curbside recycling program. So Republic Services has requested that we pay for the hauling and processing of our current central recycling site. Unfortunately, the costs to do so are coming in at an estimated $8,000 to $10,000 a month. And I understand that there is some other information out there that those might be really high costs, but that is the cost that they've given us. So within my reports, you have 2 options. That was also a direction of council to provide an option for ceasing the site or continuing it on through May when we actually have access to that property. So with that, my report is in the packet. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but staff is recommending to go with option 2, which would be continuing the site through January 31st and closing it indefinitely at that site.
Thanks, Dana. Comments? Frank?
Dana, just for confirmation and for public purposes, if this recycling site goes away, individuals in the city of Whitefish and surrounding areas that are using this facility can separately contract with today for curbside recycling. So they won't lose that opportunity to do if they want to do it that close to home. So we're not foreclosing that.
That is correct. So the, individuals can contract directly with Republic Services, and there are some other cardboard recycling entities within the city that operate. So there are those private contracts that they can hold, and then there are also sites toward the county landfill or other county sites where there is recycling available.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I would move.
Quick question. The information we got tonight from the Mr. Castron, they're paying less than $1,000 a month for the county to pick up in 9 different sites or something like that and haul it, and this is $10,000 a month
Yeah,
for one site.
I can't imagine that the county is doing that for less than $1,000 for 6 sites, given the cost of hauling for gas alone right now. And it also is going to depend on how frequently they pick up. We are a daily pickup here, and multiple times for the cardboard, actually. So, you know, it's hard to compare those two. Also, I don't know how they are working with their processing company, if the revenue is actually coming on the other side. You know, they were just looking at their budget, so I don't know that they actually had specific information from the county, or if they had just found that in their budget line items. So
But they don't pick up the cans and the paper every day.
here,
Here.
they pick up at least the cardboard on a daily basis during the week.
Okay.
So it's a 5-day pickup schedule right now for cardboard at our central site, and maybe more free. I don't remember if they also do like the aluminum and the paper products as needed, but at a minimum for cardboard is 5. I think they might even do more.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Frank,
No.
motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we instruct staff to pursue option 2 as proposed.
I second it.
Seconded by Giuseppe. Further discussion? I think it's time we take this site offline. I think it's grossly unsightful, and it's not fair to the neighbors at this point, and I can't imagine how much of those recycling bins are contaminated and just go into the landfill anyway. And there's plenty of options, as Dana pointed out, so I think it's the right decision. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. Thanks very much, Dana. We'll move on to communications, and we did make our appointments to volunteer boards and committees, so we'll move on to our board appointments this evening. We'll start with item B, which is consideration of appointment to the Fire Department Strategic Planning Committee. These are my appointments, and I know that we are going to, I'll go ahead and motion to appoint, where is it in here, Dana?
477, is it?
Page 475.
Right, I'm just looking for, I know it was Ed McGrew, motion to appoint Ed McGrew as well as
Cole Hadley.
Cole Hadley to the Fire Department Strategic Planning Committee, and I just need the council to ratify that appointment, those appointments.
I would move to ratify.
Second.
Showing of hands, and those appointments are made. Out of courtesy for Giuseppe, would you mind informing us what your top choices would be for board appointments?
Oh, yes, I sent you an email, and
Just want the council to be aware.
oh, and now I think I forgot. It was park, bicycle and pedestrian paths.
Okay.
It was tax resort monitoring committee, and now I honestly forget the
Impact fee.
impact fee. No, it wasn't impact fee.
Not impact
No,
fee?
well, I like it. They meet only once a year, but no.
The insurance committee?
You're very. I made a
I think it was
mistake.
the parking, which does not hold
Yes.
a council appointment.
Okay,
Thank you. It
Great.
was the parking fee, parking permit. Yeah.
great. Well, we'll start with item C. Number 1 is the park board. We currently have Councilor Sweeney as the designee. Frank, are you still interested in
Yes, I'm
continuing in
it's
that
one
capacity?
It's one I've enjoyed, and I'd like to stay there.
I mean, we do need an alternate designee. Is anyone interested?
I can be an alternate.
Yeah?
I can be an alternate.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's an evening meeting, 7 o'clock on 6, yeah.
Let's go ahead and plug Giuseppe in to this one, considering you're overly committed at the planning board already. You're okay with that?
I'm okay, as
Okay.
an alternate.
So you'll be the alternate.
Okay.
Resort Tax Monitoring Committee is currently Councilor Fury. Frank, or Andy, interested in continuing in that capacity?
Yeah, I'd like to.
That's okay.
I have a lot of history with that.
Seniority rules.
Bike Ped Committee, Councilor Sweeney, currently the designee.
If Giuseppe would like to step into that one, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
As you like, honestly.
Pardon?
As you like.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I think that's super.
Then I'll take that one.
Great. So we'll go ahead and appoint Giuseppe to the Pedestrian and Bicycle Path Advisory Committee. The Whitefish Tree Advisory Committee, I'll just speak for Rebecca. I would imagine she would like to stay on that committee. She's done a great job, so we'll go ahead and keep her there. Impact Fee Advisory Committee is currently Councilor Hennen, so we have a vacancy available there.
Yeah, since you are three and you keeping the tax result monitoring, I'll volunteer on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll appoint Giuseppe to the Impact Fee Advisory Committee.
Unless someone else wants to.
Insurance Committee, 2 councilors as ex officio members. They are Councilor Norton and Fury current. I think it's a pretty low demanding board. Are you interested in just continuing?
Sure, I'll continue. We meet once a year in February. That's pretty easy.
Good.
And we don't have to say anything.
I want that one.
Yeah, well, sign me up. Real Estate Advisors, currently myself and Andy. I think that should probably remain, just given the institutional knowledge that we have there, having sat on that board for 4+ years, myself 8+ years. Legacy Land Advisory Committee, we have the REC, the LLAC, as well as the Operations Committee. So they're 2 separate committees. And Andy is currently the designee for both the LLAC and Trail Ops, and Councilor Cornell for just the LLAC, if I'm not mistaken. Would you like to continue in those capacities?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I think Steve and I cover pretty well for each other on
There's
that.
a pretty big learning curve there, too.
There's a
Yeah.
pretty big learning curve on those, yeah.
Item 9, Whitefish Planning Board, Councilor Cornell, current designee, and Councilor Sweeney is the designated alternate. How you doing there, Steve?
I'm happy to be the alternate, but that's about as.
We can run it by Ben. I mean, he's not here
Yeah.
tonight, and see if he's interested. If we'll get it on
We
there.
should volunteer him, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Board of Adjustments, councilors appointed as temporary members, and that those are currently, well, was Councilor Hennen and Frank Sweeney. Anyone interested in serving as an alternate on the board?
I'll continue in that role.
Okay.
I mean,
Let's go ahead and appoint Ben as well.
that'd be great.
Okay. I saw you shake your head, so.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and appoint Ben Davis and retain Councilor Sweeney there, Michelle, and boy, I think
We're just there to fill vacancies.
right.
Yeah.
So it's pretty low,
Yeah.
low demand. Is that all we have?
No, flip over.
We gotta go back then. Didn't
We have
print.
a third page
I got
there.
Thanks, Steve. Whitefish Climate Action Steering Committee. It's a mayoral appointment. We'll just go ahead and keep Ben Davis as the designee, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Okay. Whitefish Strategic Housing Steering Committee, it's mayoral appointment. I currently fill that role. I'd like to continue. And then we need 2 counselors. Currently, it's Norton and Davis, and I would imagine they would like to retain those seats, if that's okay with the council.
Yep.
Okay. MWED, currently Councilor Fury. How often have you met, Andy?
They meet fairly frequently. It's been one that I have not done good justice to. And Giuseppe, if you would be interested, this is something I think you would do well at, actually. Montana West Economic Development Board.
I didn't realize there was an attendance to that from us, but
Yeah.
yeah, I
we have
used to
a-
attend them
we-
as a business person.
Yeah, we have a city position on there, a council
Okay.
position. so-
All right, you guys need to give me guidance though, because
Yeah,
I
yep.
represent you, so.
Sure.
Yeah, for 2 years, it never worked with my planning, or my
tough one.
not my planning, but my travel.
Availability.
And then it's been a little on and off here this last year with Zoom meetings and all kinds of things. And now the change in the director there after retirement
Kim,
and a death.
Kelly,
So,
and they meet about, noon in Kalispell?
yeah,
So it
that's
fit-
the tricky part of it for me usually. It's
Not for those that are semi-retired, though.
Who is semi-retired?
Yeah, it's a noon Kalispell meeting. It's a great group of folks and a lot of interesting
yeah.
stuff. Yeah. So yeah, if you're interested, I would be more than happy
I'll
to
help, yeah.
point you in that
Great.
direction.
So we'll go ahead and appoint Giuseppe. Thank you.
Strike that semi-retired from the Whitefish title, please, thank you.
Item 14, Sustainable Tourism Management Plan Steering Committee. Andy, would you like to continue?
I'll continue on that, yeah. And maybe if we could have a backup for that, that would probably be of benefit, so at least somebody's on the distribution list and,
I would go ahead and do that.
okay, good, yeah, that'd be awesome, yeah.
Be happy to.
I make 95% of those meetings, but every once in a while, it doesn't work.
So since we motioned on some of these and not others, why don't we just do one final motion for all appointments tonight, if you don't mind?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move that all the appointments we have discussed and agreed upon be ratified by this council.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that is unanimous. We'll move on to councilor comments. Like you indicated, Steve, there was a lot going on at the beginning of the meeting, and I do believe that we neglected to move anything on.
I'm leaving now.
On ordinance 21-20 that was removed from the consent agenda, which is again addressing our zoning regulations and short-term rental standards. That did not move forward with the approval of the consent agenda, so we either need to approve it, table it indefinitely, or postpone it to a date certain. Steve?
I'm okay with approving it if I can get consensus from the members of council that are left to direct staff to make changes. According to my comments earlier, I called out some specific places where there is room to make changes in our current zoning code. And now I lost that document. Just a second. Because, as I said earlier, what we have is not really enforceable. I've talked with Angie about this. I've talked with members of the community about this, and what they really want is for us to protect our residential zones. And if we address this in our residential zones as a CUP, the neighbors get a chance to say whether they want 30 to 90 day zoning or rentals in their neighborhood. It's easily enforceable. We can quickly look up whether somebody has a CUP or not. And we could also, the other piece I would like staff to look at is if we could have an either or, you either get a CUP or you register your rental with a licensed property management agency that does business in that has a business license in Whitefish, then we will have some teeth to protecting our neighborhoods so that we don't have a Halloween where we have a bunch of dark houses on Columbia. And I do understand that part of the issue is people that are coming to vacation are tourists or remote workers, but limiting it to those two things really makes this whole thing unenforceable. And if we have some strong language in our residential zoning that makes it a CUP, or you have to go through a property rental agency, if you want to do it at all, then we have an opportunity to really make something strong that's enforceable, that can protect our neighborhoods. Our WR2, R1, all of they're all in Chapter 2, Title 11, Chapter 2, 11-2-4, Articles A through I are our residential zones. And that gets at a lot of what we heard in the public comment about protecting our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods are for neighbors and not for tourists.
I think when the original ordinance was passed, Steve, we all acknowledged that it wasn't going to go into effect for 1 year for properties that were currently under contract or under agreement with a property management company. And I think that's where some of the language in the revised ordinance is a bit different from what I recollect from our passing of the ordinance. That aside, I think we also recognize that in this year period, we're actually going to kind of dive in and look at this in a little bit more detail. Whether the solutions you're tossing out are going to be practical and enforceable, I don't know. I can't answer that because we haven't had staff analyze those options. So my recommendation would be to move this forward to an approval with the understanding that we're going to continue looking at the matter.
I agree with you, John.
Rather than locking us into any particular alternative at this point.
Well, I agree with you. I also understand that there's more urgency than waiting another year. I mean, if we can get staff within the next month to look at making this a CUP or adding the language about property rental agencies, we can have something that's enforceable by April, that's that is passed, that protects us starting this summer, which is the time when these things really blow up, and that's the time when the feeding frenzy really is. Waiting a year, I mean, we've basically, with the current state, it's none of the midterm rental stuff takes effect until January 1st of 2023, a whole year from now. So
That's where there was confusion between the direction we provided staff and what we discussed up here. I think the language needs to be changed in the ordinance, and if, Dave, are you still on the call?
I think
Or Angie?
would be the one to answer that.
Okay.
Yep, we're here.
It was my impression when we approved the ordinance at the last meeting that the one-year moratorium would only apply to property management companies that have, or folks that do this 30-day rental program have agreements in place for 2022. Otherwise, the 90-day requirement would go into effect for all other properties.
I don't know how we would ever track property for the next year and a half. And it comes down to what Steve said is, how are we gonna track any of this? Like, I don't know how we would ever know who has property management companies. I don't think that we can actually, I don't know how we can actually signal out property management companies for the next year that have properties booked. We would never know.
I understand.
So, yeah, so I think, again, what Steve said the last meeting, and this is why we tried to craft, I think, the ordinance that the way that we did is that the midterm rental stuff wouldn't go into effect until next year. And I don't know any other way to do it. I mean, Dave, if you have any ideas, I'm open to them.
Yeah, Angie, I agree that it becomes fairly difficult to enforce. You know, we'd have to basically wait for every single person that had these to prove to us that they had a rental agency. I'm just not sure how we can differentiate people that are doing it themselves versus someone who has a rental company. I don't know if there's equal protection clauses that would apply in that situation as well, but the only way I think that we can really legally do it is have it apply equally across the board with the medium-term rentals. And if it's not to go into effect for a year, then we just need to either split into two ordinances so that we can pass the portion of it that is fixing the short-term rental penalties, and then having that other stuff, you know, go and pulled out separately and go into effect on January 1st, 2023.
Okay.
Hey, I'd like to ask a question too of Angie. Angie, how, in its current form, even starting next year, how do we enforce the difference between, how do we find out if somebody's a tourist versus a remote worker?
I think that's going to be really hard, Steve, and I think the intent behind that language in there, and I mean, I know Dave and I talked about it for a long time, is to try to protect people that are here, like college kids that are here for a couple months, or seasonal workers that are here for a couple months. And I understand the problem with people that are coming here and working remotely for, you know, a couple months and renting short-term rentals at exorbitant rates. I don't know if there's a way to enforce it. I will say that I think Dave, and with my definitely sign off, got fairly creative on, you know, who do we want to be renting in here. But Steve, I don't know that there's a way we're going to enforce it. I mean, our enforcement officer isn't going to go in there and be like, oh, are you renting for 2 years? Or sure, are you a remote worker? Are you a tourist? I don't know, but I think that we were trying to solve, you know, the problem that was presented to us, which is, you know, the tourists and short-term renters coming in and taking long-term housing. And I think what we're trying to do is still create housing for seasonal workers and college kids and all the rest of the people that come in here for a month and a second month. And I know that there's a perception that those people aren't there, but they are.
Just one follow-up
Steve,
question.
I just want to, on the enforcement end of things, I mean, if we found out somebody was doing a midterm rental, and it'd be up to the property manager to show us that the person that they're renting to is someone that isn't a tourist or a remote worker. And so then we would stop enforcement in that if they could show us that they meant that. That would be how we would enforce it.
Only if it's through a property rental manager, is what you're saying.
Or individual property owner. I mean, if they can show that the person they're renting to is someone that works at the hospital, then even though it's only for 30 or 60 or 90 days, we would allow them to continue to do that.
Okay. And Angie, I just have one other question for you. If this would move into a CUP language, would it be easier to enforce?
I think it would be easier to enforce in the sense that we would have a sense of who is renting where. So I do think it would be easier to enforce if it were to move into a CUP sort of state.
Thank you.
Dana and then Frank.
Yeah, I think getting to the CUP part and having some type of registration, this is unenforceable in the fact that we won't know who's out there renting. Our short-term rentals works for enforcement and while we're not doing great at it, it works because we have a list of registered places. It still doesn't matter. The registered ones aren't the ones doing something wrong. It's the ones that aren't, and that's why enforcement of short-term rentals and midterm rentals are going to be hard no matter what, because it's those that are doing them illegally. And so it's going to be a lot of research that staff has to do. If we had a CUP process or a registration process for midterm rentals, that is potentially a significant workload, so you will have to consider adding staff to actually accommodate that type of a registration that would occur. And so we did pull that registration off of medium-term rentals on purpose because of that. But again, I think when you look at enforcement of both, when you look at what we've done with this ordinance for short-term rentals, it was very important to have their license number on their listing, because those are things that, you don't have the address, you have pictures of the interior, people know how to get around, posting identifiable information for us to follow up on. So those type of things, we'd have to have some kind of registration process, I would think, to actually be able to at least know who's doing it legally. But then it's really the illegal ones that are still going to be the problem in the end. And so that is probably my challenge with this, is being able to tell you that yes, we'll be able to effectively enforce this at a higher level than what we're doing right now with short-term rentals.
Frank?
There are no good answers for this. Angie, you said something earlier about our ability to, or reference something, maybe I picked it up wrong, but I think there is some benefit to us as a city and a community, whether we can efficiently enforce this stuff or not, to set out a set of expectations and to lay those out for the community, knowing full well that we're going to have people that are just not going to comply, or they do everything they can to get around it. But I think it's probably worth the community having an opportunity to state what our expectations are, and setting that in this statute or in our zoning code, whatever is the most efficient way to deal with that. I think there's a benefit to that. And I think there's I get the enforceability issue. I appreciate that. And I'm not suggesting that we have conversations with every renter that ever walks into town. That's not what we're about. But I think it sets a precedent for those in our neighborhoods to say, no, this is what we expect. And I think there was a classic, I don't know whether it'll come to that or not, but there was an application tonight that we approved an ADU on. If you look at the application, I'm pretty sure what's going to happen with that place. They're not residents. They're building an ADU. I'm pretty sure what's going to happen here. And I think we need to start setting some expectations. Now, how we do that, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with what we've got necessarily. I don't like what we have without this. But I think there's some benefit to that. And so I would ask us to move forward with, at very least, approving the portions of this that will allow us to create some more enforcement in our neighborhoods for short-term rentals. And if we need to break out that other half of the thing to work that through differently so that we get something in place now that's enforceable now, I think that would be a good idea. If suspending this thing on a year's basis, which would suspend our ability to penalize people for that year, we're not helping ourselves.
Frank,
yeah. So carry on.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. And I agree with you that the restrictions on short-term rentals should go into effect. I totally agree with you. As far as midterm rentals going into effect in a year and a half, I completely agree with you. Like, something needs to be done, but
Steve,
I'd like to make a motion
please.
that we, in our reconsideration of this, we adopt the portions of this ordinance that do not reference midterm rentals. We strip out the midterm rental language and adopt the short-term rental changes that we all agree we need to do.
Is there a second to the
I
motion?
second that.
Seconded by Councilor Caltabiano.
Thanks, Giuseppe. I did this before, and again, I have no problem with making a statement about we're doing something. As it is written currently, we're not doing anything for a year anyway, so I don't see the benefit in us turning ourselves broadside to the state by vastly redefining what a short-term rental is in our town. And that's what we're doing with that current language of midterm rentals. I think we have an opportunity to direct staff to look at other options. We have several out there. Come back to us as soon as possible, hopefully no later than 60 days, so that we can have something that is a little more, that has more teeth by the time that the feeding frenzy begins again this summer.
Further comments? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And the motion passes on a 3-1 vote with Councilor Fury voting in opposition. We'll move on to councilor comments, and why don't we go ahead and start with Frank tonight?
It's not that important. You don't need to come back. Welcome, Giuseppe. I hope you'll find this work as rewarding as I think everybody here has. It takes some work, but I assure you, I hope you find it as rewarding. I would like to use what little comment I have is to follow up on that last discussion, and that is, I think we as a collective are pretty serious about having planning staff come back to us sometime in the next 60 days with some suggestions on how we can better effectuate protecting our neighborhoods. And I think Steve's cited a couple that could probably be quite useful, but we need staff to evaluate those. And so I think we've got consensus here that we'd like to see that and proceed forward with that apace so that we don't have to be worrying about this for the next year and putting it off. So thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Andy?
Giuseppe, welcome. Thank you for taking over Amway, by the way. Excuse me. As long as this is our first meeting of a new council and the first meeting of a new year, I'm going to read something. This is a book that some people know about, and it's called Stumptown to Ski Town, and it was written by Betty Schaefer and Mabel Engelter. They're few and far between and hard to come by anymore, but I was just reading through it, and every once in a while I'll pick it up, and there's a lot of really interesting things in there. And this is something from the pilot, there you go, in 1921, August 1st, and this is the Whitefish Creed. I believe in boosting everything worthwhile movement. I believe in the future of our city and will do all in my power to help it on. I believe the interests of our city are bigger than my own private interests. I believe that a town that's good enough to earn my money in is good enough for me to spend my money in. I believe in the integrity and the good intent of my fellow citizens. I believe in being big enough to concede to the other fellow that which I may desire for myself, and thereby promote harmony and the well-being of our city. I believe we can make our city bigger, better, and more beautiful if I do my part. I believe that loyalty to my city as to my country is a symbol of patriotic loyalty. I believe in making my hands perform that which my lips promise. I believe that my citizenship requires that I be earnest, honest, and energetic in the performance of my private and public duties. I believe in Whitefish. Apropos for today, 100 years later.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy. Giuseppe.
Amen to that. First, I was waiting not to interrupt. Thank you for the welcome. I feel welcome, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to make a couple of congratulations. One to our new Whitefish pilot editor, who stayed here all until now. So welcome on board to that seat. And thank you to Heidi for serving so long and so in a staccanovistic manner. And also Ben, I didn't get to work with you in this capacity, but we love numbers, I guess. I hope we both love numbers, and you show it. And we'll miss you. Hopefully, we'll find someone that can continue your legacy, although you did it very quickly and very shortly. I know he's going to short-term rent his property in the... I'm kidding. Right. And so that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Welcome aboard. Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, John, and welcome, Giuseppe. It'll be a pleasure serving with you, I'm sure. And congratulations on making it up here. Just a quick shout out to the Glacier Nordic Club for all that they've done to get the trails ready. The golf course is skiing beautifully. And just a reminder to follow the rules for where you can have your dogs on leash and off leash, because if we don't do it right, we could lose the benefit for everyone. And Happy New Year to all.
Dana, anything further from staff tonight?
Nope.
On that note, Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome aboard, Giuseppe. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Again, the next meeting is Tuesday, January 18th. And on that note,
And bring your sleeping bags.
We are adjourned.